All right, if you can find your seats, we will begin. We want to thank you for returning, and we will begin with a hymn. And after the hymn, we will have prayer. Larry, President of Southwestern Union, Larry, if you will find your way after we have prayer to the mic, I want you to have our prayer to begin with. I want you to take your hymnals and turn to 438. There is a section in the hymnal which, if you look on the lower portion of the hymnal page, you will see the actual name under which that hymn falls. It can be Christian warfare, loving service, thankfulness, etc. There's a little section called Early Advent. These are hymns that came from our pioneer days. And number 438 is a very interesting hymn. If you have heard James Nix or Jim Nix explain about this hymn, you will know that it was a favorite of James White. And at times he would begin his meetings from the back of a small church, going up to the pulpit, and he would take his Bible, and this is what is told happened. He would thump his Bible with his hand to keep time, and he would sing this song, "You will see your Lord a-coming." It's a very interesting hymn. You may not know it, but it is a beautiful hymn, and it has a strange ending. We sang it just recently on our trip up in New England, and it leaves you at the very end. It doesn't resolve itself, and you almost feel like, well, they didn't quite get it right. And Jim Nix explained that this is on purpose, because we are not resting here on this earth. We're not yet in heaven. We are awaiting the second coming. And that's why the end of the song does not resolve itself as you would normally think. Just to get a little idea, how many of you have ever sung this song before? Let me just see. All right. Now, I deputize all of you who have raised your hands to sing twice as loud as you normally would, so that the rest of the group can really get it. Now, it starts rather high. I didn't arrange for someone to play, unless we have someone who can jump up here. Otherwise, we'll just do it a cappella, and pretend that James White is coming down the aisle beating his Bible as he sings, all right? So let's sing the first and the last stanzas, all right? Oh, great. Karen Houghton will... 438. 438. First and last stanzas, all right? Karen is the wife of Dan Houghton, who is one of our executive committee members. All right? Starts up high now. You will see your Lord a-comin', you will see your Lord a-comin', you will see your Lord a-coming in a few more days. Hear the band of music, hear the band of music, hear the band of music, which is sounding through the air. Then we'll shout our sufferings over, then we'll shout our sufferings over, then we'll shout our sufferings over in a few more days. Hear the band of music, hear the band of music, hear the band what a privilege it'll be to see Jesus coming in the air. Let's stand as Larry leads us in prayer.
Our Heavenly Father, we're so thankful for the blessing that we have to work for you. We thank you for the heritage of this church. Lord, it's precious. We know to you it's as precious to us also. So as we do the business this afternoon that we have before us, we invite the presence of your Holy Spirit to be our teacher and our leader, and we ask that our discussion will uplift us toward the kingdom. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
We have one other addition to make to instructions that were given to you about tomorrow afternoon. Now, those of you who are executive committee members, you scan your badge, then you can come in before 1:20. You can, if you have your spouse with you, save a seat for your spouse, all right? Because your spouse will not be able to get in until 1:20. So just save a seat, and then she or he can join you for the afternoon session. We also have official invitees who will also be able to come in prior to 1:20, and they also, if they have brought their spouse, you can save a spot. But we want to make sure that committee members who have full committee rights are present, and also the invitees certainly have the opportunity as well. All right, we're going to turn over the meeting now to Ella Simmons, and we have a number of things that are going to take place this afternoon, including, well, we'll let you lead into it.
All right. Thank you, Elder Wilson. We will attempt several items this afternoon. If all goes well, we will take items 111, 112, 113, 114, and if we can, 115. And Elder Wilson, we're going to ask you to remain here for the first item for the afternoon. Going to call Dr. Peter Landless and his team for the item that they will bring. I'm sorry, Dr. Landless. Welcome, Dr. Landless. And you have a guest, I understand.
We do indeed. Thank you, Dr. Simmons, Madam Chair. It's a privilege for us to be with you this afternoon in this particular capacity. You may be sitting comfortably in your seat and think, what has pornography got to do with us? After all, we're all Seventh-day Adventists. We don't even think about that stuff. I was jolted into an awareness of how serious the problem really is in 2004 when I read the Newsweek of one of the Newsweeks of that year. And it talks about preachers and porn. And then it went on to say, and this caught my eye. At the Seventh-day Adventist Church, this is in the Newsweek magazine. In the Seventh-day Adventist Church in DeSoto, Texas, no one suspected that Anderson, 36, was secretly spending hours looking at porn. He is an unwavering believer in the literal word of the Bible. A devoted churchman, he never misses a meeting or slacks on a sermon. I don't want to waste or take too much time. But that description, taken from the 2004 October, I think it was, Newsweek magazine, jolted me into the realization, and we as a team in Health Ministries from that time have been working and thinking and praying towards a possible assistance for those who are caught in this. According to statistics, we understand that 30% of clergy across the board, and that's a conservative estimate, have been entrapped or are addicted to pornography. And where does a church leader go? To whom do we speak? I'm very grateful that there's been a very meaningful partnership between the North America Division, Advent Source, Bowling Green University in Ohio, and General Conference Health Ministries in creating a resource called Gateway. And we're very grateful as well that Dr. Ken Pargament, an emeritus professor from the University of Bowling Green State University, has led this project. He started thinking about it years ago, and he's going to share more with you, but he's a man of distinction who has published over 300 articles on religion, spirituality, and health, authored The Psychology of Religion and Coping, Theory, Research, Practice, has won many awards, and most recently, the first Outstanding Applied Psychology of Religion and Spirituality Award from the American Psychological Association in 2017. He is an individual of stature in the scientific world. He is a man of deep religious convictions. He is of the Jewish faith, has worked very closely with Christians, and he's worked very closely with Christian Seventh-day Adventists. And I'm not going to take up too much more time, but just to thank him for being with us. He's taken time from a family commitment to come down from New York to share with us, because we believe, and I want to thank Elder Wilson for placing this sentence in his email when he wrote to Myron Eisminger about placing this in the agenda. This is important. Thank you, Elder Wilson. It is important. And there may be some sitting in this room, racked with guilt and shame. But we believe that God has a solution. And we pray that when you've seen some of these things and you see that there is some possible help, not only for us, but for the communities we serve, for the world we serve, my prayer is that there will be a release from this tremendous problem which has so many in its shackles. Dr. Pargament.
Let us welcome our guest quickly.
My preoccupation with porn was a drain on my relationship, sapping both time and sexual desire.
It got so bad a few weeks ago that I was online every night. I think I really want to make some changes, but I have no idea where to begin.
For some reason, in the past couple weeks or so, I've been really struggling.
There are times I feel like I'm making real progress, while at other times I feel really discouraged.
I stand in front of my congregation and talk about the benefits of living a holy life while I'm secretly viewing pornography. I need help, but who can a pastor talk to about a struggle as dark as this?
Gateway is an 8-session program developed out of a wealth of psychological research and knowledge. It's designed to be a first step in helping people who've experienced problems associated with pornography. This program may be viewed as a gateway to seeking further help with managing problematic pornography use, but it does not guarantee a cure from difficulties associated with viewing pornography. Viewing pornography is an issue that can affect you physically, emotionally, intellectually, relationally, vocationally, financially, and even spiritually. We understand that viewing pornography can often lead to feelings of shame or guilt or embarrassment. Because of this reality, the designers wanted to create an easy-to-access program that will act as a gateway or first step. This program will provide practical strategies to help begin to address the problems with pornography.
I didn't want to tell my friends or family about my problem with pornography, but the big game changer for me was the Gateway program. I'm taking better care of myself emotionally, physically, and spiritually.
Throughout these sessions, I've been learning which strategies work out for me and which ones don't.
I'm getting stronger, and I feel more in control of my life and more like the me I was meant to be.
Anyone can encounter the effects of pornography. In this day and age, let's be clear, no one is immune. I have a message of hope.
This is Gateway. It's been a long time coming. We've been developing this program, the idea for it probably 25 years. I'd like to briefly provide some background to the program with you this afternoon, and also thank you for your support, your courage, your willingness to address a problem that's been in the shadows of people's lives for much too long. So let me provide you with a little background. I had my own experience as a clinical psychologist with a pastor many, many years ago, probably about 1990. He came to my office because he had lost his wife. He'd been married for 30 years. And he was struggling with the grief of his life partner, a very sweet man. And I worked with him for over a year, trying to help him deal with depression, loss of desire to live, loss of faith, loss of hope. He wasn't making great progress. And at one point in my work with him, I asked him, "Am I missing something here?" And he hesitated, he paused, and then he started crying, and he said, "For the last 6 months, I've been becoming more and more addicted to pornography. I spend my free time online looking at women. I'm deeply ashamed of myself. This goes against everything I've been taught. It goes against everything I value, and yet I can't stop myself." That became the focus of our counseling. How did he come to terms with his struggle with pornography? And I learned that the struggle was not only psychological, not only social, not only physical, it was a spiritual struggle. He wasn't living up to his faith. That became the direction that ultimately led to his change, his transformation, and his ability to regain his life and his vocation. I thought to myself in 1990 what courage it took him. It took from him to be able to open up to me. Of course, it took him a year. But then I thought, well, how many other people are there in the community, in the world, who have similar problems and yet don't have this man's courage? How many people are there like this pastor who aren't seeking out help? And I realized dozens, maybe hundreds, which led to the idea of a different kind of a program, a public health-oriented program for reaching the many people who may have problems with pornography. And let me provide you with some background on this. The internet has dramatically changed access to pornography. It's offered access. This is called the AAA of pornography. This has the name AAA. Access to pornography. Literally a couple of clicks and you can find just about any image you want online. Affordability, this is free. Sure, you can pay for it, but you don't have to pay for it. It's there, it's available to anyone. And it's anonymous. You can do this without being spotted. In the old days, people who wanted access to pornography would have to go to a bookstore or to a movie and risk being revealed, which constrained the use of pornography. But now there are no constraints. And because of this 3A of facilitators, we see today that $12 billion a year are spent on pornography. 35% of downloads on the internet are for pornography. 25% of all search engine requests online are for pornography. And 40 million Americans visit internet pornography sites at least once a month. The statistics internationally are just as shocking and just as dramatic. Oh, let me head back here. Heavy use of pornography is less common, but I want to just point out, if you look at the bottom statistic there, over 8% in this study, over 8% of this sample looks at pornography over 11 hours a week, almost 2 hours a day, over 8%. It's true for religious and spiritual people as well. 1 in 3 Christian men report struggling with the urge to use pornography. Among conservative Christian college men, about 1 in 5 use pornography. And as we just heard, there's statistics showing about 30%, 33% of pastors are using pornography. Studies also show that there are some mental health and physical health and relational consequences. Pornography use has been tied to depression, poor self-rated health, poor quality of life, anxiety, and I think most notably, shame and guilt. It's not tied just to personal consequences, it's tied to relational consequences. Most of the people that I've seen in treating pornography are not the pornography users themselves, but people who've come in because their spouse insists that they come in. They've been caught. And if they're going to save their romantic relationship or their marriage, the spouse insists that they seek out help. Why? Because pornography use leads to arguments in a relationship, breakups, decreased satisfaction with a partner, decreased intimacy. And women in particular often view, and I've heard many women in my couples therapy, often view pornography use as infidelity. If you're looking at pornography, they tell their spouse, "You are cheating on me." Pornography can lead to then spiritual consequences. As the pastor I mentioned was experiencing this profound sense of moral struggle, how can I be doing something that's so inconsistent with what I value? How can I be acting in a way that's totally opposed to what I believe in? And so pastors and others feel torn up inside. They feel torn in their own desires and in their own behavior, which can lead in turn to a sense of alienation from God, a sense of disconnection from their faith, a sense of not being loved and cared for. All of this in turn can lead to stigma, guilt, and shame. People feel isolated, they feel hopeless, and they feel like they're without help. People keep this to themselves. This is not something that's generally talked about in public. My guess is at lunch today, very few of you talked about pornography use. Peter, Katya, and I did, but this is in the context of our work, but that's very unusual. This is the background that led to Gateway. Gateway is an online program, and I think it's a great idea. If people use the internet to find ways of dealing with their discomfort, their tension, their alienation, maybe it's a potential source of solutions. That's where they go to for coping. Okay, fine, we're going to put another resource out there, an alternative resource online, which is anonymous. like pornography, but this is a pornography treatment program that's anonymous, so no one has to be revealed. No one has to reveal themselves as a pornography user. Gateway provides some tools and resources to help. It's spiritually integrated because, as I said, this problem is not simply psychological, social, and physical. It's a spiritual problem. People talk about their alienation, their disconnection from their faith, from their religious community, from their deepest beliefs, and it tears many people up. We try to help them by providing resources for wholeness. That's why we call it Gateway to Wholeness. And we call it a gateway because it's only an introductory program. It leads people to other resources if they choose to use them. So it's a first step. But it's, we think, a first step that can lead people to profound transformation and change. Now, Gateway consists of 8 sessions, I'm sorry. Each session is about 20 minutes online. The trailer you saw was just an example of the kind of work that we've done. It's been produced from a very nice, sophisticated video production company. The first session is an introduction. The second session is facing facts about pornography and the costs it may have for you and your family. People take online a test to determine whether they have a pornography problem. The third session is acknowledging your feelings about pornography without getting lost in the craving. So it helps people reflect on where they are, a kind of prayerful session. The fourth session is about how do you become more the person that's your inspired self? How to become in touch with your spiritual self? How do you find that divine spark within you and live according to that higher self rather than the kind of impulsive self that seems to be taking control of you? Guilt and shame become the focus of the fifth session, and how do we move beyond guilt and shame? Because the paradoxical thing about guilt and shame is the more guilty and shameful you feel, the more you may turn to pornography to deal with your guilt and shame, which of course leads to more guilt and shame. That's the cycle. The sixth session is about finding supportive relationships through a religious community, through God, through loving people, caring people in your life. The seventh session is how do we deal with the pitfalls that take place? Because as with any kind of addictive behavior, people do not generally change overnight. They slip. They fall off the path. So we try to help people anticipate that and to get back on the path if they do make mistakes. And the last session is our wrap-up session where they try to articulate, help people figure out, okay, where are you now on your journey and where would you like to go? What steps, what vital steps are next for you to move forward in becoming a whole person? We have a handout that describes Gateway to you, and this is the handout. We're really excited about it, that describes the program. We're going to be rolling it out later in the year. I think Dr. Reinhardt's going to talk about that, and we'll have more information for you so you can access the program and offer it to people in your communities, in your areas, your countries, so we can access this as much as we can. I just wanted to show this to you as well. We have a workbook that people will be able to also use online, so they can work with it online or print it out, which will give them homework assignments and tasks that they can do to help stamp in the skills and the new habits to help them break their reliance on pornography. I should say that I'm really honored and delighted and very grateful to the Seventh-day Adventist Church for its support of this program. I started talking about this program about 20 years ago to people, and I do presentations to many religious groups, and I would mention this program, and my solicitation about this program for support was usually met with a thunderous silence. Again, this is not something people like to talk about. The exception was your faith community, and Dr. Katja Reinert has been incredible support for this, and she's been a wonderful collaborator. Dr. Peter Landless, Brad Forbes, I couldn't imagine better collaborators. This is truly cutting-edge work. It's cutting edge in the sense that people don't want to deal with what is becoming an epidemic in the world today. This is creating a lot of relational breakdown, family breakdown, and personal breakdown, and I suspect it's only going to get more, it's only going to become a more serious problem to many individuals, relationships, and families. Your willingness to support this kind of program says something about your commitment to health locally and globally. So I'm tremendously grateful for all of your support in this process. So with that, I think I'll just stop for now and go from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ken. We appreciate your being with us. And there is much yet to be done. And briefly, we're going to ask Katja, this is a multinational, multi-language group. There are so many areas to be served. How is this going to serve everyone?
So, of course, in the beginning, we are launching this in English. But this is something that has been planned and done to really serve the global church. We hope that very soon we'll have more languages added, but this is meant to be something that's open for anyone to use, not just for our church. We want to use this for people that are out there, no matter where they are in the world, whether they have faith or they don't have faith, where they're from other faith traditions. But it brings the spiritual component to it so that we can connect people with their source of help, which is God. And so this is just the first step, and then many other resources, even on the website, will be available, such as Adventist Recovery Ministries, which is a 12-step recovery program that people can then go deeper into this within any church, any location around the world. And we've been actually expanding that even more now through many other divisions where we're doing trainings of Adventist Recovery Ministries. So hopefully soon, in the next few months, we'll see how this goes with the English version, and then we'll open up to other versions as well, other languages.
We've been careful not to give you the exact time because it's going to be, I would suggest, probably definitely by the end of the year. But it is ready to go. We've been looking at the previews, and they have been exceptionally well done. I really want to appreciate the time that's been given. I want to appreciate the attention that you have paid. I want to appreciate Dr. Pargament, Dr. Reinert, North America Division, VersaCare, Advent Source, and it's a great privilege for Adventist Health Ministries of the General Conference to host this and to take it to the next level along with our partners. So thank you so much. And Elder Wilson, would you please dedicate this program?
Dr. Pargament, we are indebted to you. We thank you for the opportunity of being able to cooperate in something that is so disastrous for so many people, and yet there is hope. And God, of course, wants to see success in people's lives in helping them to become more and more like Him, not going in the opposite direction. And we have that wonderful hope in common in God, and also the Sabbath, which is a beautiful citadel in time, helping us to understand renewal and God's great power to restore. On behalf of the Seventh-day Adventist Church and the Health Ministries Department and all those that are connected with it, we want to present to you a lovely book which the Health Ministries Department has produced on balanced, comprehensive health ministry and the beautiful aspects of health, which you know very well because you are a health professional. But we want to share this with you, Celebrations it's called, and also a lovely note from the department and a special pen that you can use to remember us by when you're making out prescriptions or whatever it is that you'd use it for. But we look forward to continued collaboration. And I want to present this to you, and then I would like to pray for the success of this program. Let me just share that with you now, and let's share our appreciation. This is a real problem. This is a growing problem. The devil is busy, and he wants to catch everyone in something. This may not be your problem or my problem, but it is a problem. And on Wednesday morning, we will be having a devotional. I mentioned this morning earlier, a presentation which is addressing another related problem. The coming out ministries having to do with the challenge of homosexuality and other challenges, and how the Word of God and a spiritual approach can give us the barrier that we need. I'd like to invite you to stand as we pray. Father in heaven, we thank you for the intense interest that people like Dr. Pargament and others have in helping bring people back to a full sense of what you want them to be. Balanced, energetic, full of hope, and pure. There's no other way that we can become pure except that you live within us. And so now, Lord, we dedicate this program, which will anonymously help people, but they will not be anonymous to you. You know the innermost thoughts of each of us, and you know that we are in so many ways impure and are in need of complete trust in you. And so, Lord, take us and use us and open to our minds a fuller understanding of what it is that you wish for us to become. You've given instruction to us in the book of Philippians and through Paul that the things that we ought to be thinking about are those things which are true and honest and just and pure, and those things that are lovely and of a good report, things that have virtue in them, things that we can praise you about. So, Lord, help us to think upon these kinds of things, all through the power of the Holy Spirit. We dedicate this program and the Health Ministries Department involvement, North American Division, VersaCare, Advent Source, and all of those who will be involved in helping people to become pure through the power of God. Thank you again for Dr. Pargament. Bless him and his team and each of us as we look to you to help us to think upon the things of heaven. In Jesus' name we ask it. Amen. Doctor, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Pargament, Dr. Reinert, and Dr. Landless. There's no need for an action for approval for this item. However, it's been recommended that we take action to record the item so that it is officially noted. Is there a motion to that effect? Thank you. With support. All in favor, please say aye. Those opposed say no. It is carried. Thank you. We needed to get this item because we had a guest waiting, but we will now go to Dr. Ng for the nominating committee report.
Mr. Chairman, the nominating committee met at 12:30, and it came out with a nomination, and this is for the position of Associate Stewardship Director of the General Conference. And the one recommended is Arnel Bob. Bob in French and Barbie in English. I have to tell you, probably he has no investment in the toy industry. He is currently the Stewardship Director in SID. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
We have the motion and a second. Are there questions or comments on this nomination? Perhaps, okay, we see some credentials information, the CV moving past, and we think there is a photograph that's still available that will come. Okay, please.
Pastor Barb is from the island of Mauritius. He speaks absolutely fluent English and fluent French, as most Mauritians do. He currently is the Stewardship Director, as Pastor Ng said, of the Southern Africa Indian Ocean Division. And the nominating committee was overwhelmingly supportive of his nomination. There is one little caveat that you need to know, and that is that his actual activities will not take place with the General Conference until there is sufficient transition with the Southern Africa Indian Ocean Division, and that will be approximately June 1. So those are comments, perhaps, Sister Chair, which can give a little further indication as to who Aniel is. He's had approximately 6.5 years of activity within the Stewardship Ministries Department, and has also been the president of the Indian Ocean Union, as well as president of the Mauritius Conference, as well as other activities in youth ministries, and I think personal ministries as well. So he comes with a very strong background.
Thank you, Elder Wilson. Are there other comments? It appears that you're ready. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. It is carried. Thank you very much. Now we will move to item 113, Geoscience Research Institute report. We will call Dr. Archer Stelly and Dr. Jim Gibson, I believe, those who are with them.
My assignment is very easy: to present to you the director of the finest institutions we have, Geoscience Research Institute. And I believe you have already visited the exhibition. If not, your sins will be forgiven if you do it later.
Well, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. I would like to help you to think creation. Now, thinking creation requires a little focus, because in our culture, we are being bombarded with thinking evolution and thinking secular and secular means. But to think creation means to start from the data and begin an interpretation from the data that fits a worldview that we believe to be correct. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to advance the slides. Is there this thing here? Ah, good. At my age, you still have a lot to learn. I'll start with the display. The display that's in the Visitor Center has two themes, design and catastrophe. This is a kind of a shot of the Visitor Center there. I hope that you'll have a chance, if you haven't yet, to go in and have a look at it. It features the two themes. The theme of design is illustrated in 4 different displays there. Complexity, which points to design. Beauty, which points to design. And that's a feature you don't see in every museum. Diversity of living things. And then perhaps the more commonly thought of way is that when you look at the structure of animals and plants, you see that they are clearly designed for their environmental needs. So all of those things point to design. And design points to a designer. In science, we don't see the creator, but we see his fingerprints. We see the evidence that he has left in the form of design. So we think of creation when we see that. Now, you may have thought that science was so firm in its convictions of evolution that it was a paradigm that was unmovable. Darwin has dominated scientific thought for 150 years. Now, creationists have known all along that Darwin was not right. But now even evolutionists are coming to recognize that. If you receive the Geoscience Research Institute newsletter, if you look at the latest one for October of 2017, on the back page in the middle column, you will see a report of an article in which an eminent evolutionary biologist speaks explicitly that Darwin's theory isn't working. And there's a need for what he calls an extended synthesis. And he tries to be politically cautious by saying, well, we'll build on Darwin's theory by adding other things. But if you look between the lines, he basically is admitting that Darwin's theory is not working, and we need something else to replace it. Now, you would never have predicted that from listening to the media. And you'll never expect that the media is ever going to give up on long ages of time. And this is a kind of a barrier. But let's remember the lesson of Darwin, which sounded immovable for so long. And I believe the day will come when there will be some problems that we see in the long ages. And that's the other theme of this presentation. We hear about radioisotope dating, and we don't really have an adequate answer for that. But when we look in the rocks, we see things that don't fit the long ages. For example, proteins and other paleomolecules ought to decompose in a fairly short time, and yet scientists are finding them in fossils that are supposed to be millions of years old. If they're really millions of years old, those things, those molecules, should have decomposed long ago. Maybe there's something missing in the theory that we're so often bombarded with. Another line of evidence. On the continents, there are sediments that contain fossils. At present rates of erosion, scientists have calculated that the continent of North America would be eroded to sea level in 10 million years. Well, what are all those sediments doing then if the continents are really that old? We still have huge amounts of fossil-bearing sediments. Maybe there's something wrong with that time scale, even if we don't know how to put our finger on it. Another thing, at the present time in the seafloor, the seafloor is tunneled by lots of little animals burrowing through the sediments, and they can churn up those sediments in just a few hours, so that there are no layers, that we should not see layers, bedding, if you prefer, in marine sediments. And yet, when we look on the land, you can see the picture there. Now, those layers have been tilted up, which is another example of a catastrophic activity. But those layers have clear bedding. Why is that? If there's really millions of years of going on in the accumulation, why have those layering survived? Maybe there's something wrong with the long time scale, even if we don't know exactly how to explain it. Now, GRI would like to partner with you in creating creation centers, something like what you've seen out in the visitor center. We can help you develop some kind of a little creation display in your university, perhaps in the science building, the library, or somewhere like that, in a classroom building. Maybe in your division or union headquarters offices, we could develop some kind of a creation center. Here's one that was developed on its own in the North Pacific Union. Dr. Stan Hudson, you see him standing there talking to some people, developed this creation center, and it's been very successful. School classes are teachers are bringing their classes there to see the creation center. People come by. It's an opportunity to witness to our faith in creation. And he's got a dinosaur bone and a painting of the dinosaur in the background you see, and a model of the ark, and he's got lots of interesting things of various types there showing with the theme of creation and the flood. In Brazil Adventist University at UNASP in São Paulo, there is a little creation display there. This is a picture of it. And there are other places too, a little resource center sometimes we call them, with fossils and displays of various types. So what is a creation center? Well, it first of all is a place, a physical location where you can put displays. It also includes a person who has a passion for this kind of thing. Not everybody's going to be interested in the same thing, but there are people who are really interested in creation who would like to develop some kind of a display that allows them their creativity and also provides a witness. And the third component is a program, some kind of activity, something to do, publicizing it, an open house, a lecture, a video, a field trip, whatever it might be. Creation centers are locally funded, but we at GRI have a very modest budget and very eager to share it and help you get it started for project funding. Here in our own library at the Geoscience Research Institute, we have our own displays there, as you can see, and more in the works. Number two, a way that you can partner with us, and we could like to partner with you in promoting Creation Sabbath. This year, Creation Sabbath is October 28th, which is coming right up, a special day to publicize and celebrate the Creator. It's on the calendar of General Conference events, but you may have overlooked it. If you come to the display center, you will see on the TV screen a little 5-minute video called The Whole, which is intended to attract interest to Creation Sabbath. And it's a very well done video. Come and look at it if you want. It's online, and you can download it and show it at your location. And you can look in the visitor center for other ideas for themes for Creation Sabbath. For example, beauty. CreationSabbath.net is a website where you can get ideas for sermons and even sample sermons that you could use for Creation Sabbath. Themes that you could use. The universe, you can talk about the power of God, the design of the universe at the greatest scale or down at the smallest scale. Biomolecules that are precisely engineered to do particular jobs, like enzymes, for example, and they illustrate design and complexity. You can talk about animals that have been created on the 5th day or the 6th day or whatever, showing design, showing diversity, showing beauty. And another whole aspect of it is environmental stewardship that comes right out of the gift that God gave us to have dominion over nature, the responsibility to take care of it. All of those things can be developed for Creation Sabbath. A third way we would like to partner with you is in identifying and mentoring graduate students and other scholars who have a commitment to biblical creation and the potential for occupying future positions of leadership. And I will just a brief example. The president of one of the unions in Europe contacted us saying, you know, we have a student here, a graduate student who's at the university studying geology. And we don't have a job for him here. He's thinking about leaving that and becoming a pastor. But we think he's got a gift in geology. Can you do anything with him? We said, yes, that's a great idea. And we took him in, and he now works for us. And his name is Ronnie Nalin. Some of you will know him. A really great guy. But it started with the union president with a vision. We'd like to partner with you on that. A fourth way we would like to partner with you is in presenting seminars on creation and science for meetings of teachers, pastors, university communities, special creation weekends at universities, short courses at tertiary institutions, continuing education credits for church workers, and here are some examples: principals meetings, church leaders, universities, teachers meetings, and other things perhaps. So we would like to partner with you in developing a better understanding of creation. You can visit our website at GRISDA, Geoscience Research Institute Seventh-day Adventist. Should be easy to remember, grisda.org. Or you can email myself or any staff director from that website. Now, last summer we just completed a field trip with church leaders, and I believe we have a video that will report on that field conference. Hi, I'm Jim Gibson, Director of the Geoscience Research Institute. I'm here in the Alps studying the landscape with a group of church leaders, and what I see here is evidence of design and evidence of catastrophe. I see design in the beautiful and abundant wildflowers all around me. I see catastrophe in the large-scale tectonic movements in the mountains and a massive scale. And I'm reminded of the Creator God, who pays attention to the little details of the flowers and has the power to move mountains.
What a glorious opportunity for administrators to understand God's beautiful handiwork. To me, the creation story, the global flood, explains so much, and yet we have questions, but let me tell you, God's word is sure.
You compare yourself to this, this is a magnificent creation, so the building, the foldings of rocks. Compared to that, we are nothing. Sometimes that we try to question God with the little knowledge that we have. The mighty God, the powerful God, the creator that we worship, that believe in. That's so mighty, that's so awesome, that's so powerful.
I may not be able to use all the scientific terminologies that we have learned, but at least I can tell those who I will get into contact with that truly everything I have seen during this Geoscience conference is nothing but total manifestations of God's power and might.
We can communicate with each other and tell each other about the great things that God has made, but we need to see it for ourselves. And so, church leaders, as we come out here in these mountains and we look around and we see the scale, we see the questions that we really don't know how to answer, we see the questions that we have had that we find answers for. And there's something about seeing it for yourself that benefits church leaders and will benefit church members and the public as well.
To have to stop and come and have a direct contact with nature. It has helped me so much to see nature having a closer look on the mountains and have beautiful explanations. We have a nice team of colleagues from the GRI that help us understand and interpret what is written in the rocks, the message that we can understand. For me, it was really helpful because, I had a very vague idea, and now I can start understanding better.
Without creation, there is no need for God. Without creation, why do we need the Sabbath? Without creation, why do we need salvation? We need to go back and see God in what He has done and be confirmed that through Him we are saved. So as we look at creation, it confirms our faith It strengthens us, and therefore we cannot rule creation out of our relationship with God or out of a relationship with each other, because creation helps us to see what God has done, confirm our faith in Him, and strengthen our belief. Our God is great.
Creation has always been very foundational to who I am as a Seventh-day Adventist Christian. I am not only a believer in an omnipotent and omniscient Creator God, but the creation also reminds me that He created me. And that brings me to the word intimacy, that the Creator God desires a relationship with me. And my heart goes out to Him and I praise Him for the creation. When I think of the great upheaval, or what one person calls the decreation of the earth, and yet in the midst of all of that conflict there was an ark, and God protected the ark and the people in the ark. I think of the power of God, and I think of the grace of God.
There are millions and millions of people in the world who do not understand and who do not believe in creationism. And as a church, our responsibility is to share this beautiful message with these people. This conference gave me a great learning experience. Thank God and thank GRI.
We can read a lot about creation in books, and we learn a lot. We are inspired by the Psalms and by writings of others who have looked into nature, and by studying in school with the biology class and the geology class. But there's nothing like getting into the mountains themselves, looking at the rocks, looking at the flowers, looking at the glaciers, the mountains, the rivers, the multitude of things in nature, to bring home to us the lessons that God is the designer, that this world has experienced a catastrophe, that God is here and guiding everything.
The doctrine of creation is a kind of a pillar. If I cannot believe in the doctrine of creation, there is no foundation for any other doctrine. I'm grateful to God and to the GRI for all these things that we have learned during this trip.
I was impressed about the earnestness of our presenters, that they could still maintain their faith when they have such knowledge, when they are exposed to such knowledge that has the potential of wiping away one's faith. That really I liked. And I saw that they see in creation that there is a designer. And when they showed us that these things could only have happened through a designer, I was truly blessed. I believe so strongly that everything that we see was created by God in 6 literal days, as the Bible says. So I am a creationist.
For me, to know that I'm created for a purpose by a God who's powerful enough to solve any problem I may face, wise enough to guide me through any challenge I may face, and caring enough to watch over me and take care of me in any situation I face, gives meaning and purpose to my life, and makes a difference in the way I see others and treat others, and in the way I plan in my own life for my goals and aspirations. Creation makes a difference.
Madam Chair, I move to record the report of Geoscience Research Institute.
Right, we have a motion. Is there support? There is. Are there questions or comments? I'll take the liberty of saying that this is always one of the best, most inspiring of all of our meetings, and certainly one of the most beautiful reports, Jim. No other comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye. Those opposed say no. It is carried. Thank you very much. Now we have some more inspiration coming our way for this afternoon, and thank you for remaining alert. I'm watching your faces, you know that. And everybody looks sharp. It's still good. You look like you looked this morning. So we're going to ask Pastor Vin and those who are with him under Elder Mbuana's leadership. Please bring us some reports for Mission to the Cities, right?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to invite Jeffrey Scoggins and Pastor Blasios to give the report for Mission to the Cities. Again, this report here differs in that every year each division will be giving a report on the progress that they're making in their urban areas based on the voted goals. And so this is something where we look forward to hearing those reports throughout the rest of the session, as well as from you as union leaders to have this same kind of report back in your fields. So then that way we can continue to keep this mission to the cities, this mission focus that unites us before the people, before every entity, and before our young people and every institution as well. So Jeff?
I'm here with Pastor Blasios Rugari from the East Central Africa Division, and we've been working up to the last minute getting things ready. So let's take a look right after this video.
It's time to focus our mission where most people live, in the cities. It's time for total member involvement in the cities. It's time to reach the millions of unreached people in the cities. Mission to the Cities.
We are focusing on just one of the cities in ECD. There are plenty we could talk about, but we're going to look just specifically at Nairobi. Tell us what we're looking at when we're looking at these numbers here.
Jeff, this time I decided not to be the one to discuss these figures, but I just invited the owner of that city, Dr. Samuel Makori, who is the president of East Kenya Union Conference, where Nairobi falls, and he will tell us, interpret these figures for us. But those of you who remember when on Friday we gave our report, we mentioned about 250,000 baptisms during our TMI campaigns this year, 2017, and I just wanted you to know that a greater percentage of those baptisms really come from our cities. We would have given you a report of 5 cities, but we have selected just this Nairobi, so that Pastor Makori, who is really the owner of this city in terms of the fact that it is in his union, can tell us a little more.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to say that in Nairobi, before I interpret the statistics, the work, not only in Nairobi but in Kenya, we have a very comprehensive plan for reaching the cities and indeed all the places, including the villages. And the principle is the work is in the hands of lay people, because it is based on the principle that it is the sheep that increase the flock and not the shepherd. So the figures here is, these are ratios. The ratio of Adventist to the general population. In the year 2015, it was 12,714, and in the year 2016, it's 10,000. And the reason is that we have been able, through that principle, to increase membership through total member involvement.
Excellent. So the ratio has gone down. That's excellent. Great. The next one is also a ratio for the UCIs, the Urban Center of Influence. In 2015, you had a goal of 21 centers of influence per 250,000 people. You have the same goal this year. Why is that?
Well, the people moving to the cities do not match the rate at which the centers of influence are increasing. But we are increasing, but the population is increasing faster than the centers of
so you established some, but the goal remained the same.
It remained the same, but we intend to increase it.
Okay, very good. Yes. All right, UCIs to population ratio. There was no data, but this year you're looking at 764,000 per urban center of influence. That's great. Okay, the next one, educational institutions.
Yes.
That is going, also, it looks like you must have opened some schools, is that right?
Yes, yes. We have encouraged local churches to open schools.
Okay.
And including, adding to the ones started by conferences and the union. And so, because of that, there have been increase of the number of schools.
Same thing with healthcare institutions?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Member to population ratio, that's going backwards, right?
Yes.
Why is that?
Well, the same reason is more people moving in the cities.
So we're not keeping up with inflation?
Yes.
So to speak?
Yes.
Okay, very good. And the same situation with the number of churches for the population ratio. Yes. So the population in Nairobi is growing very quickly?
Yes, more people are moving in the cities than before.
So we've got our work cut out for us.
I want to double our energy.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And we look, Pastor Blasios, we look forward to hearing the report on the progress next year, not only from this city, Nairobi, but also from the other cities in your territory. And so that way, these other union presidents will also be in the hot seat right now as well. Okay? Rafat, let's now go to, here is your, the clicker. You have the time. So where in the world are you going to take us to?
Well, we were asked to talk about London, and that's an area we're focusing on. We have a lot of growth. It's a city of 9 million people. We have 9,000 believers there. We have 60
pastors.
60 churches, yes. 10 church plants, and we praise God, and 53 pastors. And today we want to make it as authentic as possible. We have Pastor Michael Mboye. He's written a book. What is the title of the book?
Why Church Exists. The primary mission of the local church is to make everyone the disciple of Jesus.
Beautiful, beautiful. He's worked in London for 16 years, so we want to make the presentation as authentic as possible. That's the picture. Oh.
Okay, it looks like we have NAD right now. So okay. that'll be next. Just advance it a few slides. Thanks.
We cannot speak
Sorry.
for NAD.
Yes.
Yes, but maybe this is an opportunity to ask Dr. Mboye to talk a little bit about the evangelism school that he's involved in, if that's okay with you.
Yes. The greatest asset for the church is the church members. In London, the Adventist Church has a very good standing because of music and also health. If you go to BBC when they do programs, the Adventist Church is always called because of our gift of music. But we've noted that there is a big dichotomy. We can make good contacts with the community, but transitioning that relationship into faith was always a challenge. And so the South England Conference, their major initiative, has been the School of Evangelism. So the conference runs a School of Evangelism where leaders are invited and trained to use their different gifts in terms of connecting with the community. In my local church, I pastor the south part of London. I've been running the School of Evangelism in my local church for this year. So it was a great joy for me as a pastor this year to just graduate my first 20 members.
Amen.
And I think the most exciting part of it was to sit back and see the members not only connect with the community, but run an evangelistic program. And so I've already begun my second School of Evangelism. We meet every fourth Sunday from 10 to 3 o'clock and just equip them with the basic skills of sharing Christ, connecting with the community, being able to build confidence, but more importantly, sharing the gospel. Because it is the gospel that makes one a disciple. And so our main drive as a conference is to inspire, empower, but also enlist every member and leader to individually create communities. And what I have done in my local church, I model it. Every Thursday is my ministry day. I call my leaders next to me, and we go out there, connect with the community, but also more importantly, I am always working with a seeker to make them a disciple, and the newly baptized, I work with them to the point where they too can become disciple makers.
Amen.
Thank you. He's a great guy. So Michael is here with his wife Nancy, and he's really our pastoral TED representative on the GC committee. So stop him anytime, bother him, ask him about London, and I'm sure he'll be able to help you. Right. If it's okay with you, Doug, I have another story to share.
Well, before we do that, let's stay on task here. Take us, what do we see with these maps here?
Well, you see where there are a lot of pins there, at the bottom there? That's London. If you move a little bit up, it's Birmingham, and then you move up, straight line is Manchester. Okay. But we're focusing on London, yes.
Right, so there we see the hot spot is London in the red in the south, and all right, the next slide.
And that's a bit more where we have the churches. We talked about 60 churches and 10 companies, and so all these stars that you see there, this is where our churches are and companies are.
Right.
Correct? And then this is where we have around 1,000 members concentration. So the big circles that you see there on the map is where we have the 1,000 members.
And so from the data that the British Union provided, we were able to then look at here to see where we have Adventist presence and where we aren't. Because the goal of It's Time and the mission to the cities is not only to put every member involved here and to work here, but also to expand the kingdom into these unreached areas. So what's next? What other data do you have for us?
This is the area where we have the biggest needs. So the biggest purple circles that you see there is where we really need to focus on.
Ah, okay. That's correct.
So, and that's where the British Union Conference is making a huge effort, of course, through the South England Conference and the local pastors there. And anything that you see yellow, that's a major hotspot that we need to focus on.
That's right.
Yes.
And so here you've combined the data from the Census Bureau to actually then start focusing where are the London where are the people living, as well as then how can that inform our church planting strategy.
That's right. That's right. And that's a kind of a division of some of these areas that we need to focus on.
Right.
Can I now tell the story?
Yes.
Well, it's not really a story. It's basically about a new initiative that has been going on since 2002, where we have an IBM specialist who decided to appoint himself. Now, we haven't told the GC that, but it's a new category of pastors. It's called lay pastors.
All right.
And so he's basically, it's not costing the conference any money. And he's established what we call the Sure Way community. And that grew into about 100 members. Of believers. And they have some basic rules there that if you're going to be part of that community, you need to live within 5 miles of that center. 5 miles, and you had to be an active member in the community.
So why did they put that requirement in there? As we look here at your data in London, so because what is normally the trend with our believers?
Many of our congregations are commuting congregations. So we have people who live on the outskirts and come to the churches. Originally, many of them lived around, but then with the older generation passing on, the children and their families moved out. So most of our churches are commuting churches. And so we have that desire to be able to create something that is localized.
Yes. Okay. And so they're focusing on the actual needs of the community. You need to live within 5 miles. If you're going to be a member of that community, you have to participate. You cannot just come to church and be entertained or warm the pew. You have to be an active member. And so this is growing. It started with a small nucleus of 12, and then it's grown to 100.
Praise God.
And now it's a church. Right. And then 12 of this group, they have moved on to develop the Oasis. It's a new church plant. So it's a movement that is spreading. And in the process, they're training other lay pastors. And they have already positioned and trained 8 other lay pastors and sent them as interns to other churches to spread that movement. So I thought I should share that with you as an initiative that we're doing in London. And I praise God for the work of these workers.
Perfect. And that's a perfect illustration. That's right. And you didn't have to apologize, because that's one of the strategies that we heard from the pastor, from the British Union, as well as you at the division, to again mobilize our members for total member involvement. For what purpose? It's not maintenance here, it's for mission, and it's mission to the cities. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now I have to go back. I have to click this backward now, right? Jared will take care of it? Okay. I was actually supposed to be with Rafat, and now I'm with Dan Jackson and NAD, and so I don't actually know what he's talking about. And so I just said, I'm going to tell you to talk, and you talk. And he said, okay, that'll work. Talk.
Give me the microphone. I have the privilege of serving in the North American Division with wonderful people. We praise God for every union, every conference, and every local congregation. But we've been asked to look at one city this time, and we're looking at the city of Houston. For those of you who may not understand, you know, New York is, we always refer to it as the megalopolis, the huge city. Yet, if you look at the footprint of New York City, it's about 469 square miles. But Houston occupies 627 square miles. It is a huge metropolis. And our people in Houston and in Texas and in the Southwest Region Conference are active and aggressive in working for Jesus. This map basically is a picture of the city of Houston. If you move to the next slide, you'll see these are where our congregations are located. Now, the North American Division has set a goal that we would like to have one church for every 25,000 people living in our lands. And of course, that's a huge goal, and that would mean, I think, that we would about triple the number of churches that we currently have in the North American Division, which is 6,000. We've set a goal for this quinquennium of 1,000 new church plants. So this is where the churches are located, and you can see in some of those quadrants. Now, I don't have a light and to show you, and the lights are bright. But there are some segments there in the city of Houston where you don't see churches located, and yet they are populated areas. And we are determined to assist our conferences there, the Texas Conference and the Southwest Region Conference, to build or plant and build more congregations. Since 2014 in the city of Houston, they have planted 9 churches successfully, and we praise God for that. They are planning another 13 in the next few years. So, I mean, they're planning now for the next few years, another 13. So we praise God for that. You all know that recently, and I think the next slide, and that's the last one we'll use, shows the schools. Now, Houston, as I've said, is a huge city, and we praise God for the work of those 2 conferences. But I will tell you that every energy was strained recently when Hurricane Harvey came blowing through. It devastated a lot of that city, especially as you move closer to the bay. People lost everything. They just literally lost everything. My wife and I went down to visit, and I was coming up in the elevator in our hotel one morning, and I saw a young couple, and they had a green bag, maybe 3 feet high. And I for some reason, I asked them, "Is that the only stuff that is left?" They said, these are our earthly possessions. We lost our home, we lost our car, we lost everything. You know, one of the things that impressed me, however, and I'm going to stop after this, but one of the things that really impressed me when I went to Houston is the resilience of Christians, the resilience of our people. I went into a school, the Oaks School, a Seventh-day Adventist school in Houston that had been absolutely devastated. They had water in that school up to 6 feet high. And the bad thing is that 4 years earlier they had had a flood, and it nearly destroyed the school. They had to pay $400,000 to bring it into shape. But you know, this time they made a decision. We'll never use the school again. Water came in 6 feet high. But then, you know, the folks took me over to their auditorium, which was a little up the hill. And I went into the auditorium, and I was amazed, because what I saw in the auditorium was electricians, plumbers, drywallers, framers. They were transforming their gymnasium into a school. This is why. Listen to this story. It's an amazing story. They said, we knew after our school was destroyed, we would never use it again, but we had to clean it up. We still had to take all the drywall and all of the vapor barrier and all of the insulation out. And so we went to a company and we said, how much will you charge us to clean up our school? The response was $300,000. They said we couldn't afford that. So we put out a call to our members in the Houston area. You want to talk about TMI? Here's TMI. 300 members showed up and worked around the clock almost for 2 days to clean that whole school out, and it didn't cost them anything. So here was the attitude of the principal and the teachers. They said, this is God's school. And our members did not bail out on us. We will not bail out on our members by God's grace. School starts September 18th. So we praise God for the work in Houston, for our members there, as we do for all our members throughout the North American Division.
Madam Chairman, I just wanted, Dan forgot to do one more slide. If you want to know more about this amazing school and the resilience of what they're doing, again, we're trying to show how data, that's just statistics and numbers and maps, actually changes lives. And so you can hear this story and more stories by going to this website. So, Madam Chairman, I move that we accept these reports.
Right. Is there support? Other questions or comments? We do want to express appreciation to President Riguri and Pastor McCory, President Kamal and Pastor Mboye, and President Jackson. All in favor, please say aye. Those opposed say no. It is carried. Now, we are ready for your favorite item of the afternoon. Yes, Myron Eisminger is before us, bringing us the GC working policy items. But before he begins, please stand to your feet and just stretch for a moment. Whoa. Very good. I hope that feels better. Okay, thank you again for your attention. We actually have scheduled until 5 o'clock for policy items. We will see how long this takes, and if we complete these items in time, we're going to be calling on we're going to call on Larry Evans, Dr. Evans with Special Needs Ministries, item 137, instead of item 115. There was a need to make an adjustment there, so we'll see if we can get to that one this afternoon. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have been inspired. We have been challenged today. But I'd like to take a few minutes also to look at something that is part of the framework for what we do as church administrators, and that is our General Conference working policy. You've probably heard the jokes that we as a church, if we want to get anything accomplished, we first have to form a committee, right? We work on the basis of the committee system, and I think we have good biblical background for that. You can see in Proverbs 11:14, it says, where there is no counsel, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors there is safety. And that's what policy helps us do. So this afternoon, I'd like to just help us think together a little bit about where did Adventist church policy come from? Why do we have the policy book, what topics are covered in the current General Conference working policy, and how can you, as an executive committee member, church administrator, access those policies. And then we'll conclude by looking at some of the changes that we have in the current policy. So where did we get this policy book that we have today, that I'm holding in my hand? Well, from the very beginning of our church, if you go down to archives, you can look at the minutes of our very first committees. The votes and actions were recorded in official minutes. And how many of you out there are currently serving as a secretary or have been sometime in the past? Just for curiosity. Okay, so I'm speaking to colleagues here that understand the process of importance of minutes. However, if I ask for a show of hands, which I won't, how many of us actually look at those back minutes on a daily basis? I don't think there would be as many hands raised. We often vote things, and as long as we are in that current position, we have that collective wisdom. But after we leave from the scene, the actions that were voted by our predecessors could get lost if it weren't for the careful preservation through working policy. And so in our early church, they discovered that memory was no longer serving them effectively because some of the older leaders had gone off the scene. And diversity and inconsistency of practice was creeping in. Communication wasn't as good as it is today, and so different regions were doing different things. So they felt a need to collect, systemize, and standardize the many policies and protocols that were voted by the sessions and the councils. So in 1917, exactly 100 years ago this year, one of the church officers, Irwin Evans, said, "It is essential for an efficient organization to have uniform regulations and a working policy for all its parts." So at the 1922 GC session, they formed a committee on the Constitution and the working policy. They put different division officers and 3 World Church administrators on there, and they went to work. Well, it proved to be a bigger job than they had anticipated. Anytime, any of you that have worked on policy know, it takes time. You can spend half an hour debating just a few words to make sure that you express correctly what is intended. So, at their the 30th meeting on June 10 of 1926, we find in the minutes this quote: "It was intended that this committee should function during the 4 years and report its work at this session. However, under the pressure of business here at the General Session, it's been found almost impossible to give that report concentrated study such as its importance demands. Therefore, it's recommended to refer the report to the Executive Committee, in which practically all these men who would be asked to give their concentrated study to such a document will be found." So they delegated the responsibility from the General Conference session to this Executive Committee. And note what they said about the intent. They said the intent of the process is not to create new methods, but really to codify or gather together the actions we've taken regarding these things and get them in a workable form. So basically, they were going through the previous minutes, picking out the important items that they had voted on that would have impact on future operations, and brought those together. They said important actions are scattered all through our minutes. The idea of a working policy is to collect these actions, state them briefly and concisely, and have them in a little pocket pamphlet so that we can turn to it and see what the working policy is. So, How many of you carry around the working policy in your pocket? Good, I see some hands. I do too. It's now in PDF form, so you can. This one's a little bit awkward, though, to fit in most pockets. So the 1926 GC session voted to refer this responsibility to the Executive Committee, and that delegation of responsibility has continued over most of the policy's history. That is why you, as executive committees, in just a few moments, are going to vote the changes to next year's working policy, because that's been delegated to you by the General Conference session. The General Conference officers, taking advantage of the presence of nearly all the division presidents, they spent 2 days preceding the council in a careful study of the General Conference actions that were voted in the former sessions and councils. Now, Madam Chair, I don't plan to spend 2 days on this, but maybe we'll spend a few minutes looking at the working policy. So, in the end, the first working policy was produced. It was a 63-page digest of the official actions, and thereafter, a revised, updated working policy was voted at annual council, at first released every 2 or 3 years, but from 1977 to present, it has been updated annually. And the working policy was well received. 5 years after it first appeared, an article in the church's flagship paper declared, "The operation of a well-defined working policy in harmony with the organization has been one strong factor in binding and cementing the personnel of the body of Seventh-day Adventists together as one in purpose in Christ." Excuse me. So they recognized what the value of policy was. And in fact, it was not just the General Conference working policy that within that decade they produced, but first it had been a manual for ministers in 1925, then in 1926 the working policy, and the church manual in 1932. John? Thank you. I know you were looking for my water. That was... So, in summary, what was the policy to do? They said it was to bring unity to church practice around the world. It was to serve as an educational tool for new or inexperienced leaders. It contributed to the efficiency by conveniently organizing the best practice and committee actions, and it maintained harmony across all levels of church structure. So, from that little pamphlet of 63 pages, it's now grown to quite a comprehensive book. This current edition is 790 pages, just a few more. But if you stop to think of that, we have grown about 7 times from what we were back then, 70 times, I'm sorry, and spread around the globe. So there is a need for a document that is comprehensive and can apply to many areas of the world. All right, I know it's afternoon. We're kind of in the middle of the afternoon. So as our custom is, usually in Secretariat, we, based on our teacher and boss, Dr. G.T. Ng, we like to give quizzes to see if you've been paying attention. So I'd like to pause now, just review what we've learned, and I've asked my colleagues to help. You'll see up front here, we've got some delicious apples. For those that can be the first to correctly answer a few questions. All right, so if we can be looking out and look for hands. The first question, if you were listening, I just told you the answer to. All right, friends, are you ready to look for hands? All right. Question number 1. And if you know the answer, could you please stand up and we'll try to recognize the first person with the answer. What year was the first General Conference Working Policy published? Okay, I'll let the chair. I'll let the chair call on the.
I'm just assisting you. There's one over here, but perhaps that one rose first.
Okay, he says 1926. Is that right? Yes. All right, an apple goes to you. All right, and Brother Hensley, was that also the answer that was given there? Okay.
We're generous.
Yes. Okay. Question number 2. How many pages were there in that first General Conference Working Policy? Okay. 63. Wow, you guys are sharp. Thank you. Okay, the question is, those of you that are correctly answering, you can have your choice. You can either have the apple, or if you would prefer to have your own copy of the working policy, we would be happy to give you a copy as well. All right, and I should say that I have 3 or 4 copies that are for those A+ students. All right? What makes those copies extra special is because I've asked the 3 executive officers of our church, Elder Wilson, Dr. G.T. Young, and Juan Prestall, have autographed those copies of working policy. So I think this next question maybe deserves one of those special questions. Okay, I don't have a slide for that, but I just told you how many pages in the current edition of working policy. Madam Chair, I'll leave it to you.
Gray shirt right here, still standing in the middle.
Okay. Give him one of the signed copies.
Feet first. Right here?
Say it loud
was it
so everyone
correct?
can hear. 790? Okay. Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes. All right, yeah, give him a hand. Give him a hand. Okay, this one's a little easier. What body authorized the contents of the first General Conference Working Policy?
There's one standing hesitantly.
Okay. I will take that answer. They actually, well, would anyone else like to give it a try? No one else? Okay. Okay, so you're both right. The GC session delegated the process to the executive committee. So in essence, you're both correct. I'll take both answers. So the 1926 GC session voted to refer that responsibility to the executive committee, and that is the practice that we have continued today. All right, this one's a little tougher. What reasons were given for producing the first General Conference Working Policy? You can give them their choice. There's more than one correct answer here. Do you remember any of the reasons given?
Memory was failing and there were no records?
All right, the faulty memory, yes. Thank you. We have someone else? Okay, different regions were doing things differently, and it was to bring them together and unify the process. Okay, that's pretty much the same idea. Right, they had lost the collective memory. It wasn't just their own memory was failing, but they didn't have that history as the older leaders were going on. That's another good reason. So there's a few here to collect, systemize, standardize the policies, and we've mentioned the other items. All right, we're going to have 2 more quizzes, but I'd like to cover a little bit more territory before the next quiz. So now you know what to listen for, right? Let's go next to the purpose of policy. Why do we have policy? First of all, it provides a framework for making sound decisions by the world leadership with respect to organizational procedures. If you ever have built a building or a house, you know that you have to lay out the foundation, the walls, the roof, and then you can fill it with your furniture and other items inside. But policy is part of that framework, and it ensures that the organization is administered consistently. As administrators change, the policy will help guide them to continue on an even keel. Another aspect that I personally appreciate a lot about policy is that it helps us save time by avoiding repeated decision-making on reoccurring situations. So in other words, once you've struggled with the best way to handle a certain situation, you record it in policy, and the next time that situation comes, you know exactly how to handle it. That's another purpose of policy. It also protects the organization from autocratic and erratic leadership. Remember, we are not a presidential system. We're not like a business where the CEO gives the orders and everyone obeys. I mentioned at the beginning, we're a committee system, and we work together so the policies help guide the administration on direction as well. They also help enable fair and equal treatment of employees and members. It helps in the orientation and education of employees and volunteers. When you have a new employee come in, they might want to know, well, how does my travel allowance work, and what do I do in this situation? That's what policy is for. Policy also safeguards against fraud and other ethical failures by outlining what procedures we should follow. And then it shields employees or volunteers from making serious mistakes. I worked for many years in treasury work, and I appreciated the guidelines and the parameters that were given there because we can often make mistakes that we will be sorry for later on. And then, of course, legally, it also protects us by demonstrating the proper intended practice. So what is policy supposed to be? Policy is used to maximize the collective wisdom through input from the world church. That's why you, as the body, are the ones that decide on our policies. And it operates on the basis of mutual agreement of how the church should run and be operated. We don't always agree 100% on the policies. Like I said, we even argue sometimes about just 1 or 2 words. But when we have collectively agreed on the policy, then from that point, we go out and we work within the guidelines of those policy. And hopefully, policy can promote the harmony and order that I believe God in heaven operates on and expects us as a church to use as well. Now, policy is not the result, is the result of our unity, and it's not the cause of it. This book is pretty heavy, and we need to be careful not to beat people over the head with policy. That's not the purpose of policy. It's the result of our coming together as church members and agreeing that we're going to handle things in a certain way. So policy, as we've said, is approved by world leaders that are accountable to their constituencies that elect them. You have policies in your organizations also, and they expect you to follow these policies. It's the exercise of authority, but within accountability. Some of the policies have some wiggle room within them. They're purposely left somewhat vague, but not those in the Constitution and Bylaws sections of the General Conference Working Policy. Those sections, and we'll get to them in a minute, are voted only by the General Conference in session. And those are legal documents that don't have that vagueness that some others have. So how do we change policy, and why would we change policy? Well, sometimes the goals of an organization, the terminology that's used, or the procedures change. And so we need to constantly be looking at policy to make sure it's relevant. New challenges might arise. New policies are needed to address those needs. And then sometimes changes are requested so an organization will not be out of compliance. I mentioned a few minutes ago that I've served for some years in Treasury. When I was a treasurer of one of our conferences here in North America, we were written up by our auditors for being out of compliance with this policy right here, the Financial Oversight Committees. And just briefly, I summarized it there. Policy S3405 says that the controlling board or executive committee of each organization shall establish a subcommittee known as the Audit Committee. And then notice the composition. It says the committee shall consist of a minimum of 3 persons who are members of the controlling board or executive committee. That's where we ran into problems, because the conference where I'd worked many years previously had some pretty serious financial irregularities. The constituents had come in at that time, and at one of the constituency meetings, they had required in their own, in that conference's Constitution and Bylaws, that audit review committee be almost entirely composed of lay people, most of whom were not executive committee members. So what do I do as one of the officers of that conference, where my conference's Constitution and Bylaws said one thing, and the division and general conference working policy said another thing? Well, what we did is we asked through our union and division, if some wiggle room or some flexibility could be added to the policy. And you will see that that's exactly what was done. The next line here, it says, in unusual circumstances, these persons do not have to be members of the controlling board or executive committee, provided the reasons are documented by action of the controlling board or executive committee. So there was a well-documented reason why they needed that variance, and I'm happy to say that that was voted. That's now in working policy, and so that conference is no longer out of compliance. But the process that we went through for that was we suggested the changes to our board. It was voted on through the union and division, and as I said, in the end, the General Conference Policy Review and Development Committee approved those changes. So that brings me to some of the mechanics. The Policy Review and Development Committee is the first place here at the General Conference that policy changes come to. Most of the time, our meetings are a little bit more animated than the one in the picture here. And sometimes questions or issues are identified so that wherever the policy came from, we have to go back to them and try to resolve those questions. The wording might be changed. We might be asking, why are you suggesting this? Is this really going to be useful? Is it going to make it easier? And so these are questions. Then that same process goes from the Policy Review and Development Committee to the Administrative Committee, then through the President's, Secretaries, and Treasurers' Councils, finally to the General Conference and Division Officers' Council, and they finally arrive here, neatly bound in a notebook for you to consider. So that's the basic process. All right, I think it's time for a few more questions. We've covered quite a bit of material. Dr. Simmons. So let me ask you. Yes, go ahead. Did you have? Okay. The first question, and again, this is there's probably many correct answers to this, but what is the purpose of General Conference working policy? Anyone want to?
This one right here.
Okay. Okay, you agree? Give him an apple or a policy book, whichever he prefers.
Here's.
Okay.
I couldn't see this lady here first. This one here first. This one here, over here first. Then you. Thank you.
I'm sorry. We'll defer to the chair. Could you use the microphone there beside you? Thank you.
Yeah, another purpose can be saves the organization from any erratic decision making.
All right. So from erratic or otherwise not consistent decision.
Yes.
Okay, yes, I mentioned that when we have other situations that come like that, we don't have to reconsider them.
Right here? They're saying we can't see right up front. That's why I'm trying to do that. Okay, here's one. Legal protection.
All right, they give us legal protection. Okay, one more, and then we'll go on.
Okay, there are two that stood at the same time. Oh, see, I couldn't see her. Okay. There she is.
To exercise authority with accountability.
Okay, to exercise authority with accountability. Yes, those are key words.
Okay. There are two here that rose at the same time. Okay? They're both being gracious. Please speak.
Yes, this one maybe is just the philosophical side.
Hensley, can you give him the mic? Thanks.
One of the reasons is to help us not to repeat the same mistakes. If we agreed on the issue, we document it, we don't have to go back to it.
Okay, so we don't repeat the same mistakes.
This answer deserves two policy books.
And Elder Miranda is over here.
All right, I think you could all hear that. To maintain the unity of the procedures of the church.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to donate this copy to anyone at your pleasure.
All right. Okay, so you can see, I think we've covered that, some of that. All right, this one's a little bit tougher. And John has reminded me we still have another autographed copy. So I think this one deserves that. But I'm going to insist that it be exactly correct. And I'm going to limit it, first of all, to those that are not working here in this building. Okay? Next question, and please look for hands. What committee at the General Conference first discusses changes to the working policy? Raise your hand and be recognized. Well, that was a committee I used in my illustration, the Audit Review Committee. That deals with some of the financial issues, but that's not the answer I was looking for. This is which committee first looks at policy issues to recommend for changes. What was that? Officers' Council. That is one of the committees that it goes through. But I said in the question, what committee first discusses changes? All right, we have someone in the back, I think, that knows the answer.
That's the Policy Review Committee.
All right. That's three out of the 4 words.
The Policy Development and Review Committee.
That's the correct words, but in the wrong order. Try it one more time.
The Policy Development and Review Committee.
I think that's what you said last time.
The other way. Review. And that's it. That's what I said initially.
Okay. Policy Review and Development Committee. Don't ask me why they put them in that order, but that's the name of the committee. So give the man a hand. Okay, the next question. You'll have to think a little more carefully about this one. Not a signed copy yet. Which publication holds more authority? The Church Manual or the General Conference Working Policy? Okay, I hear a Church Manual. How many say the Church Manual? How many say the Working Policy? I'm hearing another word. Both. Okay. Both is correct, or neither, whatever. Each publication serves a different purpose, right? What is the primary purpose for the Church Manual? Okay, those policies deal with the local churches. Now, I can understand why you said the Church Manual maybe has more authority, because who votes the Church Manual? All right. Only the General Conference session can vote changes to the Church Manual. However, the session delegated changes to working policy to the Executive Committee. So you could say that ultimately the session has authorized changes to both manuals. And so the working policy is addressing more the working relationships and practices of organizations other than the local church. So those of you that have worked as pastors, I know I really got to know the Church Manual well when I was working as a pastor. But if you've now worked some years in church administration, I would expect that you probably would spend more time looking at the working policy for your organization, depending on what your role is. All right. And that brings us to looking at what actually is in the General Conference working policy. That's all the quiz questions I have now. We'll come back one more time for some questions at the end. So what is in the working policy? How many of you have sat down and read this from cover to cover in one sitting? I'd even give you a signed copy if you raised your hand on that one. All right, this is not something that we usually take for light reading material. All right. He's reminded me that we need to give some time for our translators to ask some questions and give those that have to have the delay of translation. So we'll save some questions in the next time for you. So keep listening and participating. The working policy has some things that are not policy in them. In this latest edition, for the first time, we have included the fundamental beliefs of the church. Those are also in the church manual, but those, of course, are only changed at General Conference session. So these are here only for reference in the working policy book. Another thing, right in the beginning, right after the fundamental beliefs, is our Constitution and bylaws. These changes are only voted at the General Conference session. We make recommendations, and we have some this afternoon to vote, but they will not be in effect until after they are voted by the General Conference session. And there's one more section, Section A, that is not technically part of policy. And Section A lists our mission statement, our vision, and our values. We read the mission statement at the opening of our session. That was changed and adapted in 2015, but again, this is something that was done with a lot of dialogue, and it's not something that we change every year here at the Executive Committee. The first section that is officially working policy, and you'll find a page at the beginning of Section B, where it deals with organization and administration. And this, as I mentioned, gives some foundation and structure, tells us how the church is designed, how it operates. And within Section B is a subsection called Section BA. And in that section, it talks about annual council, church manual, adult Bible study guides, things like trademark policies, the how the constituencies and boards for institutions are composed. And it also looks at the human relations, treating people with fairness and equality. These are all found in Section BA of the working policy. Records management is another area that's dealt with. Then when we go to Section C, you can see we're going through the alphabet, those of you that learned your ABCs. We get into division territories, division councils and policy, then into union and local conference sessions. If you're helping organize a session, be sure you look at those sections. The training of employees, and then some other issues, like the issue of polygamy. Going on to Section D, this is where all the model governance documents, the model constitution and bylaws, or if it's a mission, the operating policies, those can be found in Section D. And I've been asked sometimes why there's quite a bit of bold print in those sections, as well as the regular print. And so I will quote from Policy D1005. It says, those sections of the model bylaws that appear in bold print are essential to the unity of the church worldwide and shall be included in the bylaws as adopted by each union conference. Other sections of the model bylaws may be modified as set out in Bylaw Article 12, provided they continue to be in full harmony with the provisions of this model. So this section is very important for the model constitution and bylaws for your organizations. Then when we get to Section E, it talks about the credentials and licenses of our denominational employees. It helps give definitions for employees working outside their base division, how it's based on citizenship, independent transfers of employees from one division to another, and a brief outline of calls for international service, as well as employee service records. That's all in Section E, including the conflict of interest statement that we all signed as executive committee members. Going on, we then look at the departments, agencies, and ministries. And up until 1901, there were no departments of the General Conference. Today, we have not only departments, but agencies, associations, and services. And these are spelled out in Article 10 in the Constitution bylaws. And these are all governed by a group of policies that range from Section F through Section K. So just briefly, in the Section F area, there's departments. In the G section, we have the white estate. In the H section, we have important agencies, and I'll come back to these. And then in Section K, we have a policy about our supporting ministries. So just to go through these quickly, the departments are all spelled out in Section F. And you can see after the initial F, then it goes through the alphabet again. And they tried, many of them correspond, like communication is FC, education is FE, family ministries is FF, health is FH. So there's some connection with the first letter of the department, but not all of them work out that way. So then in addition to the departments, we also have ministries. 9 departments have the title ministries. And then these are chaplaincy, children's ministries, family ministries, health ministries, and so forth. You can read them from the screen. There are some other departments that we have not included the term ministries in. And these are education, public affairs and religious liberty, planned giving and trust services. And they also perform a ministry, but they're not given that label as part of their title. So in all, there are 13 departments that are authorized by the bylaws, Article 10. But there are 14 listed under the departments section in the Seventh-day Adventist Yearbook. One does not fall under the strict definition of departments, and that is the Ministerial Association. We use a different term here. It functions like a department. It's listed, as I said, in the yearbook, but not officially a department, because it's integrally associated with our pastors, and so it's not dealt with under the F group of policies. And there's also a special set of policies relating to pastors in Section L, and we actually have a proposed change to Section L in our policies that we will be looking at this week. Okay, after Section F, we go to sections G through K, and these are the agencies, corporations, and services. And you can see that includes the White Estate, ADRA, AWR, Adventist Mission, Hope Channel, and then Section K brings in the supporting ministries. Let me mention one example of Adventist Mission. It's not listed as a department because, as is spelled out in HC 05, it works with all departments. It oversees church planning initiatives, but they then operate under the local entities. They're not, they don't have an exact counterpart here as a department of the General Conference. And they provide resources rather than administer them directly. And the mission awareness function of Adventist Mission is a communication function, not an administrative one. So we have some that don't fit neatly and tidily into these other sections, and they are covered in the H section there. Now, Section M gives a brief overview of our international service policies, and we used to also have policies relating to our missionaries in sections NMOPQ. But a few years ago, we took those policies out of our working policy, and now the mission board administers those through a separate policy book called the International Service Employee Working Policy. So, we're down to section R, and Brother John, Adventist Volunteer Service. The policies for you and your counterparts is taken care of there. And then when we get to section F, we get into the general financial policies. SA is the auditing policies, like the one I used in my illustration. Then section T, we get into division financial policies. The U section covers institutional financial policies. V deals with tithes and offerings. And there was a section F, but that dealt with the mission funds separately, but those were integrated in 2012 into the section V, dealing with both tithe and offerings. And then finally, the last three, X, Y, and Z, deal with ingathering, remuneration, and retirement, which many of you have separately in your division working policies. And hopefully section Z hasn't put you all to sleep, but I think it would be good now. We've covered some more information. Let's have one more quiz. So I thank my colleagues, our associate secretaries that are helping out. This one is maybe not something that I directly covered just now in my presentation, but it's more of a thought question for those of you now that are experienced. So this question is, if compliance with the General Conference working policy would result in a violation of civil laws, what should you do as a leader? How would you handle that? Okay. Let's see how good the answer is. Okay, let's take this mic down front.
You consult with local laws and navigate carefully to make sure that the church does not violate laws. But there are some cases in which we hold a biblical issue, say pertaining to marriage or other things, that it would take very careful navigation in order to deal with whether the civil laws or the church laws take precedence.
Okay, thank you. There is an answer in working policy that says that you do have, we follow Paul's counsel to follow the laws of the land as much as we can, but you should also consult with the General Conference officers and get a variance if it's a significant issue, so that you're not in non-compliance when the auditors come and check on that. Okay, our next question is going to be specifically for those that have headphones in their ears. Okay, so our translators, if you can translate this. Which section of General Conference working policy contains the model governance documents for organizations? The model constitutions and bylaws. I'm looking just for the letter of the alphabet. Okay. Is there anyone that knows that is getting translated? Okay, maybe I was talking too fast as I was going through those. Okay. You can guess any letter of the alphabet and you have 1 in 26 chance of getting it right. Okay? Section D, yes. Give that man a hand. Actually, if you would like an autographed copy, would you like an autographed copy of the working policy? You prefer an apple? Okay. Maybe it's because it's in English. Okay. All right. Here's another question that could be tough. Should we give it again to those? We'll give you another chance. It's another hard question though. All right, here's the question. Whoops, I gave the answer. When did associations become the church's general departments? Okay, I mentioned very quickly in passing that we did not have departments of the church until one very pivotal General Conference session in the year... What year was that General Conference session when our current departmental structure was set up? Okay, I'm looking for a hand that is getting translation through their headphones. Okay, is that too tough? Okay. $1901. Great. All right. And that was at the 1901 General Conference session. Okay, thank you. All right. Next question. How many departments, and we'll make this a general question. How many departments are authorized by the bylaws? Madam Chair, we'll let you recognize. 13, is that correct? Okay.
They gave the same answer.
Okay.
And this one was over here. You'll have to help me.
All right. Let me have an add-on to that. There are 14 listed in the yearbook under the departments section. What is that 14th?
This lady is standing here.
All right. Thank you. You get an A+. Okay.
In the pink.
Would you like a book? Okay. Sure, we'll give you a signed copy. All right, next question. Is the Office of Adventist Mission a denominational department? Yes or no? No, you can't answer, Rick. Okay. All right, can you explain? Very good. Give that man an apple. All right. It works with all departments. Okay, thank you. That's the last quiz question I had, unless one of my colleagues wanted to ask another one. Okay. If you didn't get a chance to answer a question, we have a few extra copies down here. All right.
I have a question.
Our head professor has a question.
You asked earlier on, what if the policy contravenes local law. What do you do? I have another question. What if the General Conference working policy gives the appearance of violation of local laws? It is not violation per se, but it gives the appearance. What do you do? It's a tough one. We're still wrestling with that.
All right, thank you. Okay, we've talked quite a bit about General Conference working policy, but what about your division working policy? According to Section C, 1005, it says each division committee shall prepare and establish a working policy for the division, its departments, and the organizations and the institutions within its territory in harmony with the Constitution and working policy of the General Conference. As I mentioned, the General Conference working policy cannot deal with every situation in your local area. It's a broad framework. It's the shell for the building, to use the metaphor. The division policies then can fill in more of the details for their territories. Those of you that are union officers and employees, your unions also should have policies that will further fill in those details that you need to deal with things in your organization. And even on the conference level and missions, you should at least have an employee handbook or some policy to help your operation work more smoothly. In the words of one of our General Conference officers back 100 years ago, Irwin Evans said, "It is essential for an efficient organization to have uniform regulations and a working policy for all its parts." And I think that is still wisdom that we can learn from today. So, what about policies? How important are they for you as a president, a treasurer, maybe a layperson? How important is it for you to know the policies? Well, every leader has an obligation to become acquainted with the policies that relate to your area of responsibility. We're not asking you to memorize this book, but we do want you to have a general knowledge so that you know when you have an issue, yes, I remember there's a section of the working policy that deals with that issue. A leader should also have a general acquaintance with the policies of your local organization as well. And finally, some of you have asked, how can we access these documents? Well, as executive committee members, all of you have access to the portal, the SharePoint site for executive committee members that has a PDF version for download of the General Conference working policy. We don't publish it on a non-password protected site just because we don't want them to be available to anyone just searching through that are not part of our church. But the fundamental beliefs, you can see, are located on our main website, Adventist.org, under the beliefs section there. The church manual is available also at Adventist.org at that link there. And as I mentioned, for executive committee members or our ISEs, we have it readily available there. And if any of you have trouble downloading that or getting access to that, please talk to me or one of my associates in Secretariat, and we'll make sure that you are able to access those freely. Working policy is not infallible. It can be changed, obviously, because every year we vote some changes. But it is a valuable tool that is based on biblical principles, that in the hands of wise church leaders gives the church direction in its administrative decisions. Policies have contributed through the years to the unity of our worldwide church and have helped us be more effective in our mission of sharing the good news with the world in preparation for God's soon return. It's one of the Holy Spirit anchors that stabilizes church structure, unifies action, creates harmonious working relationships, and facilitates mission. I'd like to now turn to our agenda booklet, and in the few remaining minutes, I'd like us to look at the specific policies that we are proposing to change this year. Now, you'll know in some years in the past, we have gone through those very quickly. We have not even read or referenced each one of them, but we realize that it is important to spend a little time at each executive committee meeting, each annual council, to look at these policies. We know that for many of you, you've been on committees that have already dealt with these, but we want to find a balance. From years ago, when they might spend a day or two discussing these policies in general, to going through them so quickly that we don't even understand what's in there. And then when you go to your division year-end meetings and need to present these policies, you don't even understand them yourselves. So if our assistants could help us, yes, we'll switch to the Constitution and Bylaws agenda. If you're following along in your copy, the agenda for this is it's on the blue pages, and it's in the 200 section. The first actually starts on page 51, and like I said, I'm just going to hit the highlights of these. But if you have questions or concerns as we go through them, I'll ask our chair to keep watch of the mics, and please raise your hand and come forward to a mic if you have any questions.
Myron, before you get started, are some of these items clustered or are these individual for action as we go through?
I will leave it to you whether you would like to take them as a whole. We often have voted them as a block, unless there's a specific issue that we need to vote for it separately. But in the minutes, with your permission, we will record them as separate actions.
Okay. If we can do this quickly, we could take them individually. It's not an issue as long as we can move through quickly, but some of them just naturally cluster.
Okay, starting on 51. Page 51, this deals with a policy amendment, and you can see down on line 31 of page 51, the change that we're proposing here is for church manual amendments. Instead of waiting to the last annual council meeting of the quinquennium before we bring them to you as executive committee members, that as we have recommendations throughout the quinquennium, that we bring them each year. And so if you have things that you want changed, you could refer them back and we would still have time to edit them. If we wait until the last meeting and we have a major change, we might not be able to get it prepared in time for the GC session, and it would have to wait 5 more years. So that's the intent of that first policy. If we go on to page 52, there was some ambiguity here. The rationale on page 6, or on line 6, tells us the amendment provides for cooperation between the General Conference and the division in regard to the replacement of division officers. Our policies and the Constitution and bylaws were very clear how we elect division presidents, both at the General Conference session and in between times, how that goes through the caucus process that serves as a nominating committee and so forth. But it was not spelled out with the same language relating to the other division officers. So you can see the proposed addition on line 25 is that the division officers shall consult with the General Conference executive officers concerning mutually agreed upon potential candidates for nomination. And then the next paragraph, number 3 on line 29, the full division executive committee under the chair of the General Conference president or his designee acting as the nominating committee shall submit its recommendation for, in this case, the new division president. And then if we go to page 53, you'll see this is the section dealing with a division secretary or treasurer. We've used similar language on line 10, saying the division officers shall consult with the General Conference executive officers concerning mutually agreed upon potential candidates for nomination. And then it also spells out that when a name has been recommended, the division executive committee acts as a nominating committee to submit the name. Again, that's not a major change, but it's just bringing together and clarifying that process. Okay.
Question, Mr. Chairman. My concern with adding the language mutually agreed upon, could that create hypothetically a conflict? What if there were recommendations that were not mutually agreed upon? Could that give like a veto situation to either side, either the General Conference or the division?
Okay, that's a good question. The ultimate decision, the body that elects the division officers is you, the General Conference Executive Committee. So just as a nominating committee normally functions, it does the due diligence, it recommends names, and then it refers them to the body, but the body can either vote them up or down. So rather than in this process have the division recommend a name that is known that would not pass at when presented to the executive committee, the suggestion here is that they try to work on mutually acceptable names so that the process would flow more smoothly rather than playing ping pong back and forth. Okay, I think the concept has been there in previous policies, but it wasn't spelled out, as I said, specifically for secretaries and treasurers. All right, seeing no other people speaking, let's go to page 54. Again, in the rationale on line 7, you can see this amendment brings the notice requirements of a mission-level model operating policy into line with those given in the model bylaws of conference-level organizations. We just learned which section has the model constitution bylaws? Section D, right? Okay. So there's specific bylaws, constitution bylaws for conference, union conferences, local conferences, but for missions, instead of calling it bylaws, we call it the operating policy. And they did not have the language that you can see down on lines 30 through 32 in what to do if there was inaction or non-compliance by the union level. And this is just adding that same language in here. To read the sentence, you need to start on line 21. You can see the underlined part there. Notice of the time and place of the meeting of the delegates representing the members shall be given by, A, is a notice printed in the official publication of the union mission at least 4 weeks before the day of the session, or B, a method approved by the blank Union Mission Executive Committee, provided all member units receive notice with sufficient time to select delegates. And we would like to add a comma and the word or at the end of that line. Then letter C, a method approved by the blank division executive committee in the event of inaction or non-compliance by the blank Union Mission Committee. So this, as I mentioned, is for the Union Mission Operating Policy. If you go on to page 56, there's three that go together. Let me just present them all, and then I'll take your comment. If we go on to page 56, you'll see the exact same language is recommended for the Union of Churches Operating Policy. That's on line 10, where that's noted that this is the Union of Churches. And then if you go to page 58 on line 10, you'll see that we're talking about the local mission operating policy. So in order for this language to make sense, we appreciate one of you that came to us and suggested some alternate wording here. I think we left out at the end of line 28 on page 54 and for the other two as well, that we need a comma at the end of the line and the word or. Okay? Brother Rod.
Please state your name and your division, please.
Rodney Brady, South Pacific Division. Just looking at that clause C that's been added, and still when you read it in context to the line 22 above, it applies to all three. I don't think it's very clear on what basis the Division Executive Committee would approve something, because I think inaction or non-compliance of what? They're just words, and in discussion with one of the people in Secretariat, what the intent was, if inaction or non-compliance of calling the session. So if they'd missed their, the printed notice or methods, the division could approve something else. I think as it reads now, it could be interpreted non-compliance of policy or inaction of what. It's just not expressed correctly. You could fix it two ways, I'd suggest, and I'll leave it to Myron. You could just put a full stop at the end of the Division Executive Committee, a method approved by the Division Executive Committee, full stop, which would cover some other way if it couldn't be coped with. Or you could add at the end of it, which I think is partly your intent, to say non-compliance by the committee in calling a constituency meeting is what we're talking about. And I'd leave it to our Secretariat to decide, but I would suggest that the current wording is not precise enough or accurate enough to describe really what is required on all of those three.
Okay, so which one do you think is the most clear that you would propose?
Well, you can do it two ways. If you want to just have precise language, you could just leave it a full stop at the end of the Division Executive Committee, which just means that they could approve any other method that was deemed necessary. Or you could add at the end of the sentence and say, for them not calling the constituency meeting. It may be quicker and easier at this point to just put a full stop at the end of the Division Executive Committee, then take out the compliance, because it just means any other method. If they miss the first two, the division can approve another basis, and that it avoids some of the clumsy language that we may want to sort of fix on the floor, and maybe next year if there's some. I think in talking with Secretariat, there's some other ones that may have to harmonise with as well next year, so you may want to give some more thought around that. So maybe if you're happy, I'd like to move an amendment then that we put a full stop, or we'll leave it Secretariat.
Perhaps rather than to try to handle that right here on the floor, we could just pull that one and just to be sure that you have a clear understanding of what you're trying to do, and then just bring that back tomorrow.
Okay. So these three we will keep until tomorrow or Wednesday, and we'll work together on some wording there to make that more clear, if that's a consensus. Yes. Okay.
Did someone else approach the microphone? Perhaps just returning to a seat. Okay.
Okay, let's go on quickly to page 60. This is, you can see on line 6, the rationale for this is it's due to the transfer of Christian Record Services to the North American Division. That was voted a year or two ago. And so this would still be appropriate on line 22 in the North American Division working policy, but it is not necessary, since this is no longer a General Conference institution, to have the field directors of the Christian Record Services mentioned for issuing ministerial credentials, licenses. Okay, going on to page 61. This is dealing with credentials and licenses. And again, this is not changing any practice, but it's just spelling out more clearly our procedures here, starting on line 9. Credentials and licenses shall be issued upon commencement of employment to denominational employees and to those under the supervision of conferences and so forth, or denominationally owned institutions. Credentials and licenses terminate at the time employment with the issuing organization for any reason has ended. As you know, credentials and licenses are connected to your employment with the organization. So this just makes it totally clear that when you start, you will be issued the appropriate credentials, and when you end your employment, they are no longer valid.
Myron, is this a change in policy or just a change in the language? In the presentation?
It's intended to be just a change in the language. It clarifies it because I guess there was a request that we do that.
Just wanting to be clear for everyone. I see someone at the mic. Please identify yourself and your division.
Yeah, Brad Kemp, South Pacific Division. Just reading through the amendment on lines 12 and 13, Myron, the clause for any reason seems to be a redundancy. I would think that if a person leaves employment, they leave employment. It also doesn't work well with what you have down a little further under line 14 for in special cases, etc. So therefore you've got a reason that's not any reason. So it seems to conflict a little. It would read just as equally as well to take that out and just say when you finish employment, your credentials are taken.
Okay, I think
there appears to be no objection to the policy itself, but still some concern with the language. Would you like to work with that one and bring that one back as well?
Sure, since we're bringing some back, I'd be happy to work with you on that. And I know we discussed some different options on this at our policy committee. And I don't see our legal counsel here because this originated through their office. So, okay, but we can work together. Yes. Maybe if you would like to work with Brother Karnick, we can come back with some wording in the next day or two. All right, page 62. This is a new policy. And the rationale on line 5 is to follow an action taken by the Accrediting Association of Seventh-day Adventist Schools and so forth to authorize divisions to accredit mid-level worker training institutions. These are often more technical in nature, trade schools. We refer to them sometimes in English, where it's like an additional 2 years beyond the high school. And you can see there, I'll read it on line 12, mid-level training institutions. Seventh-day Adventist education also offers education that goes beyond secondary level, but is less than a bachelor's degree. This education includes diploma teacher training, technical training in building and construction or other professional trades, and non-collegiate hospital-based schools of nursing. In the context of the Church's philosophy of education, mid-level institutions prepare individuals for the world of work, civic and social responsibility, spiritual dedication, and economic self-sufficiency. I think these institutions have been out in some of your divisions, and I appreciate our Director of Education, Dr. Beardsley Hardy, and others that have worked this. And so it's just reflecting in policy now what is already happening in many parts of the world. All right, going on to page 63. The rationale on line 6 is that this amendment makes membership adjustments to the International Board of Ministerial and Theological Education and to the Division Boards of Ministerial and Theological Education. It also authorized the divisions to accredit the mid-level worker training institutions that we just talked about in the last policy, following the action taken by the AAA, Accrediting Association. So you can see down on line 31, this is not a big change there. It's just the asterisk is putting the president or the chair on the executive committee. It's also taking on line 36, the advisor, or vice president advisor for BRI, not as a vice chair, because in practice these always occur during these meetings when the president is always here to chair, or so those have never been called upon. And going to the next page, there was also a request that we add one full professor. This is line 1 of page 64. One full professor who teaches in an accredited ministerial and religious formation program to the executive committee of this board, the International Board of Ministerial and Theological Education. Line 4. We, in the past, had just left it open for all presidents and deans of seminaries and universities offering denominationally recognized doctoral programs in ministerial formation. But as our institutions have multiplied around the world, that has become unmanageable in size. And so the recommendation is to have 5 presidents and deans represent all of the organizations, and presumably those would be rotated, and so that the others would also have a chance at some time in the future. Then line 7, we have on line 1 put one full professor up on the executive committee, and so this is just changing it from 4 to 3 other faculty. So the total has not changed. It's just splitting them, 3 as regular members and 1 on the executive committee. There's some other editorial changes, but I'd like to go to page 65, line 18. Again, we've changed the wording a little bit here to make it clear that we are looking for faculty who teach in accredited ministerial and religion programs, because this is the Board of Ministerial and Theological Education, of which at least 4 are at or above the rank of associate professor. And I should have noted that this is we have moved to the composition of the division board on page 65.
There's someone at this microphone.
Okay, I will
Please
pause and take your comment.
Ken Aupe from SID. This is on page 64. That's line number 3. It's just the word. I just want to find out the rationale for using the word 2 chairmen as opposed to chairpersons as in other sections of the policy. Would that make any difference at this level? I'm not thinking about other things. I'm just thinking about at this level of the membership.
Okay.
Would it make a difference if we say chairpersons as opposed to chairmen? I thank you.
Thank you. I believe that was the original intention, that was just an oversight when the others have been caught. We appreciate the sharpness of the SID.
Okay, so with your permission, I will make that as part of my motion when I move these at the end.
Okay. And then returning?
Brad Kemp. Look, just for clarification for my own thinking, I noticed that the denominationally recognised institution is dropping out.
The page, please.
Page 65, and we're looking at line 19, 18 and 19 and 20, just that amendment there. So we're dropping out denominationally recognised institution. We've got in its place accredited ministerial and religious programs. Can I assume correctly that these are denominational institutions, the accredited ones. It's the same thing, in other words. We're not...
There's a question. Dr. Beardsley-Hardy, would you come to the microphone and just respond to that one,
I just
please?
don't want any assumptions made, that's all.
Absolutely.
Sure.
I think the intent is AAA accredited, so we could add that word to AAA accredited. That was the intent.
So they're denominational institutions.
Yes, we could say AAA accredited. Thank you.
That's a good catch. That was the intended language, and somehow that was shortened. Okay.
Okay, and there might be that similar language in another place in this policy. With the permission of the body, we would
Yes.
include that as part of the motion as well.
Yes.
Okay? This is why we have, in the multitude of counselors, there is wisdom, right? All right, I think we were pretty much to the end on page 66, on line 5 to 6. This is just adding the mid-level training institutions into the language. The same is on page 67, line 4, and line 15. So I think that brings us to the end of that policy. If there's no one else at the mic, I will go on to page 68. And this is, as I mentioned in my introductory remarks, sometimes the goals change, and that's a reason for updating policy. This comes to us from our Family Ministries Department, and they have worked with their counterparts, and you can see on line 30, they are focusing on 10 major areas during this quinquennium, instead of what's struck out on line 34 was 11 before. So I don't know if that has anything to do, Brother Willie, with the 10 commandments or not, but certainly I think those make good sense. Going, the next policy in your book is on page 69, and this is actually the major policy change, probably, of this year, based just on time and energy on the various committees that worked on this. However, we have had one of you come to us with some substantive change that we would like to be able to discuss further. So I would like to wait on this one until we can work out that wording. So we will skip past the L section today. And that brings us to, I think, page 86. This is in the U section. You know, we're getting down to the end. Page 86. Again, in some discussions with you, this is dealing on line 9 with the employee-sponsored study for the Doctor of Ministry degree at Andrews University, the sponsorship for that. And the current wording of the policy was to be an ordained minister of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. We have not limited our the Doctor of Ministry degree to only ordained ministers. We also have commissioned ministers in that program, and so this is just reflecting that language, what our current practice is. Then that brings us to the end of our working policy amendments. So perhaps I would make a motion that we accept the working policy amendments, and then I have some constitution and bylaws amendments.
Okay, we hear support for the motion. Are there additional questions or comments? I hear a call for the question. All in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. It is carried. Thank you.
Okay, there is one that has come in after your book was printed, and so I wanted to deal with it a little bit differently. It has come to us from the Adventist World Radio board and through our AdCom. I think you see it now on the screen. It's not in your books. And this is due to the legal issues that we have because Adventist World Radio is headquartered here and incorporated in the United States. The Federal Communication Commission regulates radio stations, and so they require that that the members of the operating board be citizens of the United States. So in the past, the current wording lists as the constituency all members of the General Conference Executive Committee, but we have had legal issues with that. And so what we are recommending from our legal counsel and through the AWR board that we change the wording that the members of the General Conference Executive Committee who are citizens of the United States shall serve as the constituency of Adventist World Radio. So I would move that change.
Okay. Is there support for that motion? Is it clear? Are there questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye. Those opposed say no. It is carried. Thank you.
All right, just a few more.
Okay.
We now move to the Constitution and Bylaws amendments. And again, if we go back to the introductory remarks, if you're still awake, you will know that what we vote here are not final, right? Why is that? Does the General Conference Executive Committee have authority to change the Constitution and bylaws? No. All we can do is recommend the changes to the General Conference session. So please don't update these in your division working policies. These do not take effect until they are voted, presumably in the year 2020 at our next session. But we would like to again, work these through the process so that if you have suggested changes, we still have time to go back. And this, the change is on page 87, starting on line 33. And this is actually just to reflect the wording in the Constitution and bylaws that we already have in working policy. And that is that the parliamentary authority pertaining to all rules and procedures for the General Conference session not covered by its Constitution and bylaws shall be based on the General Conference Rules of Order. This has been our practice for many years. This is the similar language in the model Constitution and bylaws for your organizations. But we realized that it was not in our Constitution and bylaws, and so we would like to propose that we add that. And then I'd like to do one additional one that maybe we could group together with that on page 88. This is a minor change, but...
I'm sorry, Myron.
Okay.
Is it, Brad, is it about the one we're just moving from? Or the one that we're moving into?
All of them.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe.
And I appreciate your explanation, Myron, but I just wonder if we'd be better off changing the wording to actually recommend these through to the General Conference session rather than just saying to amend, because it looks like we're just amending them here. So just change the wording a little to make it more accurate as to what we're actually doing.
Okay, the style that we've used for a number of years, you can see on page 87 there that the big word, the first word in all caps is recommended.
That's recommending it to us to take the action.
Okay, we can look at that. That's basically the wording of the motion, not the wording of the policy or the Constitution and bylaws itself. So thank you for pointing that.
So you're holding that and bringing this one back? Is that what you're saying?
Our reference line at the top shows the path of the document. That's why the recommended is there, because it goes on to the next committee.
Yes, if you could, maybe we could take another minute for education. If you look at the line up there, Okay?
Line 1.
Actually, line 1 is what we're looking at. This is the path. If you want to know, like I mentioned earlier this afternoon, what path a policy has taken, these abbreviations can all be found in the beginning of the workbook, the notebook that we have. But this is saying that this came from Secretariat. It went to the Constitution and Bylaws Committee. It went to our Administrative Committee. It went to the Secretary's Council. And it went to our General Conference and Division Officers meeting. And then the 2 is where it is right now. It's going to the 2017 Annual Council. And then the plus means it still needs to go on to the 2020 GC session. So that's the guide that we use. I'm sorry if it's maybe not as clear, but Brad, perhaps we can talk some more about your concern.
As I read this, line 6 says recommended, so you're recommending it to us to take the action to recommend, and our action needs to be to recommend. So the first recommended, as I see it, is what you're bringing to the body here. Then we need to take an action to recommend to. So that's why I'm suggesting the wording is not accurate. Right. It's actually misleading. It's looking like we're amending it here, which
well, in the minutes, when we record the minutes, if we vote this, it will still say recommended. And it's because it goes through so many committees to have our staff change it every time between voted and recommended and so forth. The system that's been worked out many years ago was that it would stay recommended in the minutes, and with the line at the top showing the pathway. We haven't had an issue that I know of in the past.
It sounds like there is agreement with the process path. It's just that there was a desire to see greater clarity in spelling that out in this one point, and we can see that. Okay.
Okay. So now let's look at page 88, the change on line 13. This is in a section that talks both about the Division Executives Committee as well as the General Conference Executive Committee. So we received a request from one of the divisions that we be a little more specific. And on line 13, the vote by the Executive Committee, it's referring to the General Conference Executive Committee. So just to take away all ambiguity, we are proposing at their suggestion to add that it's the General Conference rather than the Division Executive Committee there. Okay, going on to page 89. This is looking at the General Conference Executive Committee, Article 13. And you can see, again, that we are looking here. Let me just start reading with paragraph C on line 15. The General Conference Executive Committee shall have power to elect or remove for cause officers, directors, and associate directors of departments, associations, and services, and committee members to fill for the current term any vacancies that may occur in its offices, boards, committees, or agents due to death, resignation, or other reasons. The phrase "for cause," when used in connection with removal from an elected or appointed position, and that would also include in practice, but we are spelling out also from membership in the General Conference Executive Committee, shall include but not be limited to, and then it goes through the definition of "for cause." And you'll recall several years ago in the working policy, we added number 5 and number 6. And so we are proposing that we bring that same wording that's in working policy currently into the Constitution and bylaws to bring those in line.
Myron, we have someone with the microphone.
Yes, Madam Chair, Lowell Cooper, residing in the North American Division.
Thank you.
It seems to me that this item may have more than a tangential relationship to an item that's on our agenda for tomorrow. I'm wondering if the chair and the undersecretary would accept a request to delay consideration of this matter until after tomorrow afternoon.
We have done that with a couple of other items this afternoon where we needed clarity or further consultation, so we will hold this.
Thank you.
All right, then that brings us to the end of our Constitution and Bylaws recommendations. So I would move the changes that we have just indicated.
Ms. Block, all right. Is there support? Hello? Yes, there is a second. All right, are there additional questions or comments? Dr. Ng is moving. I thought perhaps he was moving to a microphone. He was not then. All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. It is carried. Thank you.
Okay, the final part is going to the consent agenda. It's on page 25 of your agenda. And these are items that we usually don't discuss in detail, but we need to record them in our minutes. And so the first section, you can see items 1 through 4 on page 25 there are the calendar of special days and events for the years 2017 through 2020. And these are constantly being updated and changed and added to. So I'm sure we'll have some good eyes that have more suggestions for those. And the same is true for our authorized meetings, items 5 through 8, for the same years. Then finally, the rest of our consent agenda deals with membership adjustments due to changes mostly in personnel. You'll see we have a new president of our NSD and one of our divisions. So I would move, Madam Chair, that we accept the consent agenda.
Okay, is there support? Thank you very much. Seeing no one move to the microphones, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That is carried. Thank you.
Thank you for your attention.
Should we give just an expression of appreciation to our quiz master?
And my associates.
Thank you. Now, I have one item of legal housekeeping. Please let me take you back to the report from the divisions on ministry to the cities. Those of you who were watching your chair very carefully and closely may have noticed that when I called them forward, I called for Elder Mbwana. He did not come up to the platform. When Pastor Doug Venn offered the motion, and this is the education part as well as the part of correcting the error, I should have turned to him and said, this is your recommendation, because he's not a voting member to make a motion. But I looked to the seats and was accepting the nod from Elder Mbwana, but I did not make that verbally explicit. So we need to take care of that now. If you'll help me clean it up, please. Elder Mbwana.
Madam Chair, my apologies. I should have been up there actually. But with your permission, allow me to thank all the divisions, including MENA, for the tremendous work that is going on in the cities and the clear focus that is given to the cities. We really appreciate that. And I also want to appreciate the great support they give to our director, Pastor Doug Venn. He's happy with the cooperation that he's getting from all the divisions. And with that, I am very happy to move the reports that were given by this division today.
Okay, we have the motion then to record these reports. Is there, thank you, I hear quick support. We've had our discussion. All in favor, please say aye. Those opposed say no. Thank you very much. That is carried. We have just enough time for Larry Evans to bring his report on special needs ministries. And I'm going to ask, as soon as he finishes, I'm going to ask Dr. Wilson to take the chair so that I can go prepare to chair the IS board meeting, which will start in about 14 minutes. So Larry Evans is here, and whenever you're ready, I will move. Thank you.
All right.
It
Thank
is
you very
item
much.
It is item number 137 in your books. Thank you.
Okay, we want to just bring to you a very brief report and to share with you a great concern that we have, as well as a request. But first of all, let me just remind you that when God was telling his story in the book of Genesis, he obviously began with chapter 1 and not chapter 3. That seems so obvious. But chapter 1 begins by talking about God's purpose. Had he started with chapter 3, he would have started with our fall, our disability, our brokenness. But God started out not with where we have fallen, but with a purpose that he has for us. To me, that's a very profound understanding of who God is and what he has in mind for us. And that, for me, lays the for special needs ministry. Special needs ministry officially began, in a brand new way at least, in 2015. A lot has happened in just 2 years, and we want to give you a brief overview of what has happened. But let me share with you the newly voted mission statement of this ministry. Special Needs Ministry seeks to inspire, equip, and mobilize those who are differently abled to serve God and community, as expressed in the mission statement of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So those three components comprise what this ministry represents: inspire, equip, and mobilize. A group of people that we often think of as simply making sure that we provide for them. We make sure we provide their rights. And this ministry does not focus on that, but it includes that, but it goes beyond that, to inspire, equip, and mobilize them for ministry. Ellen White makes a very strong statement, and you've seen this no doubt before. She says, "I saw that it is in the providence of God that widows and orphans, the blind, the deaf, the lame, persons afflicted in a variety of ways have been placed in close Christian relationship to his church. It is to prove his people and develop their character." So one of the great objectives of this ministry is not only helping them, but in so doing, our own character develops. I must admit that I never had this on my radar, this ministry on the radar for myself, but it was providential. God has blessed me personally by becoming sensitized to a group of people that we often see off to the side. I tell my wife when we're in the grocery store and we see someone in a wheelchair or someone who's blind or someone who's deaf, I'll say, "Those are one of my people." And I'd like to suggest to you that they are one of our people, that they too must be part of our mission objective. Now, this is a huge ministry, because if you take that statement by Ellen White and put it together, there are 6 different areas of ministry that special needs encompasses: the deaf, the blind, physically challenged, mentally or emotionally challenged, orphans, vulnerable children, caregivers. The whole area of caregivers came as I began looking at those first 5, and I realized that if we don't do something for them, the people who are working with them will burn out. And so we need to find a way of supporting caregivers. It might be of interest to you that in the U.S. alone, in the United States alone, there are 43 million caregivers, 34 million of which are unpaid. And these are individuals who are open to ministry, who are open to hearing the gospel in new ways, where we can give support to them. And so this ministry becomes very important. But also when we think about caregivers, there's also that area that Ellen White begins that we have not done a whole lot with, at least I haven't in this ministry. But as I began looking at it, the issue of widows becomes a very important issue. As I travel, especially overseas, I become sensitized to the fact that there are so many widows, especially in war-torn countries, poverty area. It may be of interest for you to know that the statistics show that there are 245 million widows today. 115 million of those widows live in abject poverty. Individuals who have serious need financially, materially, but also spiritually that we need to take a look at. Some time ago, I was an editor of a journal, and I did a number of interviews. And during that interview, I interviewed Joan Bova. Some of you have heard me talk about her before, but her testimony is one that we need to hear again. As a person, she told me, as a person with a disability, God has given me abilities too, right? So if you're smart as a church, you'll look at me and say, what are Joan Bova's abilities? Not asking what can we do for you, but what are your abilities that you could put to use? And then she said this, you know, I'm not a disability. I am a person. And that wrestled with me, I wrestled with that thought, that conversation many nights as I would lay in bed thinking about this ministry and thinking about her. And I said, these people are wanting to feel like they too belong, that they too have a part in God's church. And so it raises the question, do we talk about disability versus a differently abled person? Do we talk about what a person cannot do, or do we talk about what they can do? And so our ministry here has begun to talk about the possibilities that these individuals have. These individuals need to know that they have a possibility, that they are something. But sometimes we're the ones who need to learn that. Sometimes we need to learn at them and say, what possibilities do they have that can contribute to the mission of our church? And so I appeal as I go around visiting that we make sure that they also have a place at the planning table of the local church, of the local conference, and the local union. That they too begin to have a place here. Just yesterday, we provided interpretation for the first time, I believe, for an annual council, and it was broadcast over Hope Channel. We're very excited about that, the first time. And there's a lot of historic firsts. We have another one that I'll tell you about in just a moment. But there's a lot that has happened in 2015, and some of you may not be aware of what is happening. So let me just, I don't have time to give a full report, but let me share with you some important developments. Some of you may not even know that we have a Hope Channel Deaf that is working today. It's an internet channel. And you can go to it by hopechanneldeaf.org. And you can view programs in 5 different languages. Now, sign languages, many of them, and captioning, many of them. And we're hoping to expand. Right now, we're working on adding Chinese to that. We have a number of programs that we'll be able to do in that. But we also have a special needs .adventist.org, which covers all 6 areas, which is becoming a resource website, where we have experts who contribute different articles and all those areas that I think would be helpful. And our original first website was the Adventist Deaf Ministries, sometimes referred to as ADMI. Adventist Deaf Ministries, or AdventistDeaf.org, is a place where the deaf internationally come. Reports are given, news reports are given that are there. Recently, I was in Zimbabwe. One of the most interesting experiences I've had. It it was a wonderful camp meeting that was there, and they said, by the way, because I was speaking for church, he said, be sure to make a call at the end of your sermon. And I made a call because they had evangelism going on, and I had the privilege of speaking. I was amazed. 34 people came forward. But this is the first time in my ministry, and I've had a number of meetings, but it's the first time in my ministry that I had 10 wheelchairs come forward. And I thought, how often do we overlook these simply because we're not giving them an invitation? 18 deaf were baptized as well. You see Tobias there at the top picture being baptized. He has no use of arms or legs. He's a very bright individual, and he was there. He was baptized, lowered into the water. It was very important. Then there was the first baptism of deaf ever in Burundi, and there were 42 baptized. So the message continues to grow and grow and grow. I received word. I didn't know about this, so I received it by email. But look at this, a historic meeting of blind, the largest meeting of ministries for the visually impaired or the blind in the South American division just happened. And the whole program was conducted by the blind. So the word is getting out. In just 2 years, there is a rapid movement. And as I tell people, what I see taking place is something that no human being can take credit for. There is something divine taking place. To me, this is one of the greatest signs of Jesus soon coming, because it is a sign that Jesus will never leave anyone behind. And we must not either. And I've been 2 or 3 times now to Montemorelos, a very large university in Mexico. And I need to say that there is something taking place at that university that is unique. We were just there. I brought a team with me, and we did an advisory there. But the president of the university has an unbelievable vision. The first time I was there, I spoke for the university church, and 3 students, 2 medical students, 1 dental student came to me afterwards and said, listen, before you ever came, we just felt a very strong burden that we needed to learn how to sign in Mexican Sign Language. I said, amen. It's another example of God working ahead. And right after that, the president said, we need to go outside because we want you to dedicate a handicap parking sign. Now, I've dedicated different things. I've dedicated in India motorcycles, but I've never dedicated a handicap sign. And the reason why he asked me to do that is because we are making this whole campus friendly for those who have limitations. We want them to know that this school is for them too. But that wasn't all. The president at this last meeting said, how many here who are deaf attending this advisory that we were doing, how many of you wish you could have had an education? How many of you wish you could go to university? 3 or 4 raised their hand because some of them were older. He says, consider it done. We will sponsor you at this university. You see, one of the great challenges of the deaf is not having opportunities because of, quotes, their limitations, but they will make a way for it. I must also say that my associate, we call him honorary associate, I get him for 30 days a year. The Georgia Cumberland Conference pays his salary, I pay his travel. And then I was surprised, but Andrews University made it possible through special arrangements for him to get his Master of Divinity, a 3-year degree, Greek and Hebrew. His wife was his interpreter for him. She didn't get the degree though, but he did. Now I want to challenge you. This is my request. I'm going back to Montemorelos next year. I also have an invitation to go to the university or college there in Italy. But I'd like to offer that suggestion to the rest of you as well. We need to have I would like to have maybe next year 6, 8, maybe 10 universities where we would have a weekend symposium, where we would work with your team, of your college professors or whoever that would be, and we would work together to have an awareness for the students for a weekend. We believe that we've established a foundation, and between now and next General Conference session, we must expand, and we must work to reach the next generation, or the present generation of leaders, young adults. And so I'm pleading with you to consider this for your university or your college, to make it possible. You don't have to use me, but I'm happy to come, I'm happy to help. But we must do something to help this next generation understand that these people that we often put behind disability parking signs are not people with disabilities, they are people with possibilities. And we must help the church begin to see that possibility. And I also like to suggest, we've been to almost every division. There's a couple divisions where we haven't been. But we need to have division advisories so that we can then move to union advisories. And those of you who may not know what advisories are, these are training sessions in which we acquaint and orient leaders to this ministry so that they can become sensitive to it. No one in this group here ever intentionally says we don't want special needs people to be with us. No one says that. But when it's not brought to our attention, we don't know about it. And so my appeal to you is to become aware. We have a 3A strategy. And the 3A strategy is, first of all, to become aware. Number 2 is to become accepting of these people. And accepting is more than putting their name on a list. It's more than simply being included. It's more than simply saying we believe in diversity in our campus or in our church or in our union. It's more than that. It means creating a sense of belonging. Belonging is different than just simply being included on a list. And then finally, number 3, we need to develop action steps. Any vision needs action steps for it to be realized. And I'll close with a statement. Well, I have 2 last statements. This is a statement by Ellen White again. Angels of God are watching to see how we treat these persons who need our sympathy, love, and disinterested benevolence. I like to think that the angels in this room are listening and talking to you and speaking to me. I think of the statement by Mark Twain. Kindness is a language which the deaf can hear and the blind can see. I'm going to challenge you. What can we do for these people? TMI is not complete without the special needs individuals having a part too. The mission of the church is not complete without these people having a part and being commissioned to go forward too. This is not simply a disability ministry. This is an mission advance ministry. And we must work together on this. Thank you, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much, Larry. Larry's doing an excellent job with special needs ministries. I want to say thank you to the divisions. You have taken this so seriously. Thank you for being champions of these various groups that are so important to reach. We are at the end of our session. And we will begin tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock with a devotional. You will not want to miss it. And we will be ending our session here this evening with prayer. Dave, you have a comment, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Dave Wagley, North American Division. I understand tomorrow there's going to be a very important meeting in the afternoon. And perhaps this comment should have been made with Myron's presentation to us, We've always appreciated the General Conference getting material out to us ahead of time that we could review it, read it, study it, pray about it. This meeting tomorrow may have a document that's very important, so I would humbly request that if you're willing to have that document released to us through email this evening, that the committee can review and study it. I realize it couldn't have happened probably before because it was a dynamic document you were working with, but I would just humbly request that that would be possible, that you would release it to us. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your request. The plan is that the document will be released at the time of our session tomorrow afternoon. All right, I'm going to ask Jose Zul, who is the union president of a very important union in the Inter-American Division. He has the responsibility of caring for millions of people. In fact, he is the president of the union that covers Mexico City. And most recently, we had terrible things happening, earthquakes, not only in Mexico City area, but certainly beyond there, in Chiapas and elsewhere. I hope you are praying for our people in Mexico. I want you to know we prayed earnestly. Israel, we've prayed earnestly for not only the situation in Mexico, but all across the Caribbean, multiple hurricanes that have taken place. And we just want you to know that our hearts go out to those in that division, in the North American division. We have prayed earnestly. The General Conference released some funding to help these two divisions. It is minuscule in comparison with what is needed. But the General Conference has given to the North American Division for Texas, Houston. I don't know how we're going to handle Florida as well. Fortunately, that hurricane didn't seem to do as much damage as had been anticipated. But the terrible earthquake in Mexico, the hurricanes in the Caribbean, the General Conference has given $400,000 to each division, those two divisions, North America and Inter-America. But that's just a pittance in terms of what is really needed. So I hope you will be generous in helping. ADRA is doing its part, and you can give through that. But Pastor Zul, we want you to know our great love for the people who have suffered, and we ask now that you will pray in a special way, not only for those people, but for all of us, and for our continued session tomorrow morning, especially tomorrow afternoon, when we hope that each of us will be as Christ-like as possible as we focus upon God's church. And I ask you to stand as we pray.
Padre nuestro que estás en los cielos, santificado sea tu nombre. En esta tarde, nuestro Dios, lo primero que queremos hacer es expresarte una vez más nuestra sincera gratitud, porque después de los últimos eventos en diferentes lugares del mundo, hoy nos concedes la vida para gloria de tu nombre. Gracias, Señor, porque nos permites una vez más sesionar en este lugar de tu iglesia. Que los asuntos hoy considerados sigan teniendo tu bendición y que el propósito final sea seguir haciendo nuestra parte para cumplir con la misión que nos has encargado. Queremos suplicarte, Señor, que tú bendigas a cada una de las personas que de alguna manera fueron afectadas y que hoy sufren, que probablemente tienen algunas limitaciones ahora para vivir después de los embates de la naturaleza. Por favor, nuestro Padre, sé tú su pronto auxilio en la tribulación. Amén. Te agradecemos por las oraciones de tu iglesia. Te agradecemos por la forma como tú te manifiestas en toda circunstancia de nuestra vida. Queremos suplicarte que tú puedas, Señor, seguir proveyendo para tu iglesia en todos los lugares donde se necesita para que las cosas materiales puedan ser restituidas progresivamente, pero sobre todo para que estos aspectos que hemos estado enfrentando nos acerquen más a ti y nos preparen para tu pronto regreso. Señor, al ir a descansar, pedimos que vayas con nosotros en el lugar donde estamos descansando. Y desde ahora suplicamos que tu Santo Espíritu siga haciendo acto de presencia en este lugar y que mañana la agenda pueda estar bajo tu control y tu dirección. Rogamos una bendición para cada una de las familias aquí presentes y que tu paz y tu bendición, tu gracia y tu amor vaya con todos nosotros. Todo te lo pedimos en el nombre precioso de Cristo Jesús, nuestro Señor. Amén.